Take a look behind the curtain with a real whistleblower and American patriot. Prepare to embrace the uncomfortable truth because this program has no time for comforting lies. Here is civil liberties enthusiast, Second Amendment defender, and recovering FBI agent Kyle Seraphin.
Well, hello, my friends, and welcome to the Kyle Seraphin Show. Today is Wednesday. It is March the 25th. We are going to break some glasses. We might get ourselves... Well, that was good. Yeah, we're going to start with some tech difficulties, I can imagine, right away, because the topic we're going to cover is the January 6th pipe bomb, the revelations from Blaze yesterday, the story that was in there. I want to dig into it with Steve Baker, and his partner, Joe Hanneman, is not here, but we're going to kind of go ahead and discuss the discoveries they have, and we're going to add a little bit to it. I can guarantee you're going to hear something you haven't heard before starting today. If you guys watched the Viva Fry podcast yesterday, you probably saw some of the bombshell revelations. Let me just give you an overarching idea. It's all connected. It's all connected, and we're going to get there in just a second. As usual, just when I go ahead and decide to add something, my camera goes away as I'm trying to get our devices connected. What is going on here? Guys, if you can't see me, give me 1 second. Unbelievable. Absolutely unbelievable. Nothing. Yeah. All right. Well, I may not be on the screen for this, but I'm going to jump on into our quick ad read for our friends over at Silent. Guys, if you can't see me, so be it. Quick and dirty. Silent is a Faraday product. It's made of a mesh inside of a bag that will block all of the signals that can be used to track you. This is something that maybe you might use if you're worried about the government looking into what you're about. It blocks RFID, it blocks Bluetooth, it blocks GPS, it blocks near-field communications. And they also have really, really smart designs. What you're seeing on the screen right now is the E3 Everyday Faraday backpack. That's the one that I actually use to travel out here to Arizona. I use it to carry all the stuff for the show. It also carries clothing and extra GoPros and all kinds of stuff like that. You'll probably actually start seeing a video that we made for this particular backpack hanging out on Facebook and some of the other places that they're promoting it. You can go to slnt.com/KYLE. That's going to save you 15%. Make sure you're using Kyle at checkout, 15% off for a very thoughtful, really capable, and get what you pay for type of product. I've bought cheaper Faraday products. They just tend not to work. So if you guys are interested in making sure that you have something that actually does what you hope it will and it doesn't fail like the typical Chinesium, check out the E3 Everyday Faraday backpack. It's my hands down favorite stuff I've got from them. They've got a crossbody sling if you want to carry a gun, some other options, but make sure that you have an opportunity to put your phone in a bag, get off grid, stop getting tracked. I think Steve Baker and I are going to be talking about that in just a little bit here because Steve's had to use a Faraday bag quite a bit in the investigation and during the research into all of these stories, which they all seem to be connected. We're going to get into it starting right now. All right, let me bring on the man of the hour. Here he is, Steve Baker. Good morning to you, my friend. How are you feeling today?
Hey, Kyle, I'm great. Where in the heck are you right now?
I'm hanging out in Arizona in the mountains at a semi-undisclosed location.
Okay, yeah.
I also didn't bring any hair care products, so I should have been wearing a baseball cap like you. I might even have to put the hoodie on. I love that our live chat is like, hey, what's going on with Seraphin's hair? As though that were the thing that was important.
I think we both look like we just got back from the gym or something. That's we didn't wear our dress blues or our suit and ties
No, but you know what? I think it's appropriate because the stuff we're going to go through today is pretty heavy. I think I woke up in the middle of the night with it. I don't know about you. Do you have any difficulty sleeping last night at all?
Well, because I have to track those things now, because of my, recent health incident. So I've got one of those watches that actually does that and tells me what my sleep score is every morning when I wake up. And my sleep score was extremely low last night.
That checks out.
The weird thing is the last dream I had before I woke up, it was, why am I blanking? The guy who's the current ambassador to Israel,
Huckabee.
Oh yeah, Huckabee. I had a dream about Huckabee. It was the last dream I had.
That's a weird. Do you often dream of Mike Huckabee? I feel like there could be a whole series about that.
I've never dreamed of Mike Huckabee, and I have appeared on his show, his program, Mike Huckabee Studios, just outside of Nashville, and I've appeared on his show one time. It was very nice. He was very nice. I think it's because the controversy. I saw saw some clips from the interview he did with of Tucker Carlson, and he was very belligerent with Tucker on a particular topic, and so maybe that was it.
Let's start with what you dropped yesterday. Have you gotten any feedback or fallout from your interview with our friend David yesterday?
I've gotten no fallout whatsoever. I stepped out of. I certainly didn't step out of my own comfort zone. I've been not allowed to be in my comfort zone for the last 4+ months. I've had my voice throttled. That's all I'm going to say in that regard. I think everybody has known that. Now, my throttling preceded my heart failure event the week before Christmas, or the Sunday before Christmas. But in fact, your show, this show right here, was the first time I had even done any kind of broadcast media at all since we first started doing stories on, and I should say first when we started doing stories on the pipe bomber again, because I've been doing stories on the pipe bomber for years.
Right.
But with new revelations that we had, new evidence that we had, we began again in earnest in November, early November. And then my voice was silenced, and then it was almost permanently silenced.
Yep.
And then you and I did my appearance with you back in early January, I think it was. Is that correct? Do I have that right?
I think it was, and I think that's going to be something we're going to drop. The fallout from that has not yet been heard by this audience, and probably by anybody, and so we'll reveal that in just a few minutes here. But yeah, I think we did something in early January because the reaction to it was aggressive, even though people didn't see it.
Yeah. So with that said, I even did that appearance with you without permission. And with some consternation and let's say some anger from some people, but nevertheless, I have reached the point where I'm stepping back out. I am not going to be throttled any longer. That doesn't mean that I'm going to talk about everything, because there are people that are dependent upon a level of caution. From my own perspective, my fear switch was broken years ago.
Mm-hmm.
And I mean that with all sincerity. Even when they were wheeling me at breakneck speed down the hallway towards a heart cardiology triage room on the Sunday evening before Christmas, as I looked back on that moment for the next few days, and even the first time, so my best friend, of course, visited me in the hospital while I was there, and his name's Chuck, and of course, he asked me, a million questions, and I said, well, the oddest thing about it is that I had no fear at all. I wasn't scared. And he was like, stop right there. What? He goes, you've got to explain that to me. It's because as they're wheeling me down the hallway, I'm like, so what's going on here? Because the guy was running. He had me in a wheelchair and was running. So what's going on here? He said,
this is the intake guy?
What's that?
This is the intake guy from the hospital?
Yeah. Yeah.
And let me just catch people up. If you're new to the program, this is Steve Baker. He's an investigative reporter. Right now, he's working for Blaze. There are endless hours that he and I have gone over his story, and you guys can go all the way back and find out his time as a Cold Warrior, working in the Soviet Union as a dissident, his time being a musician professionally, and then his sort of transition to being an investigative guy. He was arrested for January 6th by my former agency, and so we share that bond of dislike. And he had a medical incident that took place in December of last year that resulted in major heart failure, congestive heart failure. He's talking about going into the hospital on that. So if you guys are not familiar with the story, I don't want to leave anybody in the lurch going, what the hell are they talking about? That's it. And so this story is still only a couple of months old for you, kind of a new way of life.
Yeah. And so anyway, I'm in the middle of a heart failure event. They don't know if it's a heart attack or what it is. And they've just done an EKG on me. They come grab me, throw me in a wheelchair, guys running down the hallway. And I'm like, well, this is interesting. I've never been moved through a hospital like this before. I said, what's going on? He says, we're coding you. And I went, and I'm talking to him. I said, you're coding me. I thought that was when you flatline. He goes, that's the way we're treating you. I went, oh. Okay. And so as he's running down this long hallway, pushing the wheelchair, in my mind, I went, well, this is interesting. And then I went, okay, is this the way I go? Then I went, I wonder if they're going to have to crack me open, like a chicken and do some sort of bypass surgery on me. I've had close friends who have gone through that, and they've had to take all of the hallucinogenic medicines and everything afterwards, and had incredible, stories to tell, of horror, post surgery. And I just was like, okay, well, this is going to be an adventure. That's kind of the way I looked at it.
Yeah. That's what a lot of people say when they think they might be dying.
Yeah, and it was. And so when I'm telling my best friend this, and he just like, what? You weren't scared? And I said, no, I didn't have a moment of panic, fear, or whatever. And I'm not saying that because I'm something special. I'm saying that just because that caught me by surprise too.
I was going to say, you've had plenty of time to think about it. Why do you think that was?
Well, there was another thought, because there's a lot of thoughts, and how it's amazing how fast they can run through your mind in a few seconds. Mm-hmm. And one of the thoughts that I had was, I've had an amazing life. This in my mind, I remember it as clear as I can be as they're wheeling me through the doors into that room with all of the latest technology. I mean, it looked like the Starship Enterprise in there. This room where they were about to do a couple procedures on me and figure out why my heart wasn't working.
Yeah.
And I remember as they're wheeling me into that room and I see all of that the most prevailing thought was, well, I've had a hell of a life. And if this is it, I'm okay with it.
Fair enough. I think it's all connected, Steve. I think that we're going to try to deal with that today. I'm glad that you're on your feet. I saw you yesterday in the afternoon. You sounded great, and you were dropping some bombshells. You decided to do something you called an audible. You had to explain to our Canadian friend, Viva Fry, what an audible is. I watched that a couple of times. I had people reach out to me from across the federal government, for whatever that's worth. I'm going to say that nebulously because that was something that happened, and people, you can take that for whatever it means to you, but people are paying attention to Steve when he speaks. There'll be people that are monitoring this chat that we're having right now and the expose we're going to do, and we're going to probably surprise some people. You decided to do an audible. I watched you pause. He asked you a question about something, maybe what the FBI knew or what they were doing, and what made you decide to start dropping some information that, you've shared with me privately, but I know you've been holding on to kind of close to the vest? What motivated that yesterday?
The biggest motivation was that, and again, look, there are people's livelihoods right now.
Yeah.
that are affected by the words that I say or don't say. I've literally had someone call me up and say these words to me. The only phone call they've ever made to me, very important person in my life, even though it's the only phone call they've ever made to me. And the first words out of their mouth were, and I quote, "Why don't you care about the future of my children?"
That's pretty heavy.
The answer to that question is simple. To the extent that I'm supposed to do unto others, as I'd have them do unto me, which I believe in, I do care about the future of your children. But in the micro sense, they're not my responsibility. I'm responsible for my children. And when it comes to my job, I'm responsible for only one thing, and that's the truth. Now, if the truth affects your livelihood, am I responsible for that?
I don't know. It seems like that's what we signed up for. So
I say that to say this is that I've made more than one call in the last few days to people that my words might affect their livelihood.
Sure.
And I've said, I will be careful if you need me to be. And without hesitation and without exception, all of them have said for me to tell the truth. So, am I going to unload everything in one giant dose? No. I need to be wise about that. I am, look, from the counsel of many comes wisdom, and I am actively and fervently seeking the counsel of the people that I trust the most in how I begin to roll these truths out.
Yeah.
And so the reason why I first appeared with you as the first media show I had done in 2 months, and the first one I did after my heart failure event, it's because I consider you a friend, and I consider your counsel and your wisdom to be important to me. I consider your experience, especially in the life that you have led. You have had and done things experientially and training and learning educationally that I need that input on in order to craft how I'm going to deliver this overall message. And that's true of quite a few people in my life. They all have different experiences. They have different talents. They have different, they hold little different pieces of that overall wisdom in their life's experience. And I need that. And there's not only people that will be affected or could be affected in terms of their lives, their careers, their finances, by what I say or don't say, but there are also people we know in this overall story arc whose lives have already been substantially damaged, changed by the forces that I think we all should be working against anyway within our own government. The dark forces that got you suspended, turned you into a suspendable. The same dark forces that don't want the truth out, The same dark forces that have to, as Mike Benz puts it, the blob must protect the blob.
Yeah.
First and foremost. Not embarrassing the Bureau is more important than the truth.
That needs to be said one more time. I think it needs to be said one more time.
Embarrassing the Bureau is more important than the truth.
All right, so here's the heavy drop, because this is the headline of today's program, and yeah, we're taking our time getting to it. I understand that, folks. If you guys saw the little kind of teaser that came out from yesterday's show, the Viva Fry podcast, then you can get a sense of where we're going. But we believe the FBI has the wrong guy, that they know they have the wrong guy when it comes to the J6 pipe bomber case. And the reason why I have this "it's all connected" visual is because so much of what's happening right now, Steve and I both believe, and I've been walking around carrying this for quite a while, that it is connected to things that are happening that appear unrelated. And Steve, if you're okay, I'm going to play a quick little highlight from yesterday's show that you did in the afternoon with David. And it'll just give people a little sense of what we're talking about. If you guys didn't see that, you should go see it. I think it's worth your time, especially catching it with the live reaction. But this is kind of the taste of where it is. If you want to grab a cup of coffee real quick or something, or get a sip in there, Steve, here's give you a quick breather.
A second administration official said that Kent leaked classified information from a server to a member of the media.
That's me. Check your text messages right now.
I can say what you texted me, and I'll read it. No,
you can put it up on the screen if you have that. If you have the technology, but
I got the technology.
What I will do,
it's right here. It says Joe Kent under investigation for leak from America's Voice News. John Solomon. Several months ago, the FBI began examining a potential leak in technology. Believe it is connected to Kent and his office. We are told whether charges are going to be brought soon. Page 2. Let me get this in focus. A law enforcement source said FBI agents had determined Kent shared secret government information with disaffected MAGA media figures like Tucker Carlson. A second administration official said that Kent leaked classified information from a server to a member of the media.
That's me.
And it's Joe Kent, who leaked the information to you?
No, it's a lie.
Okay. Jeez, I don't want to. This Audible's going to get this whole stream shut down. The lie is.
We'll break away from it. Anybody who didn't see that, you should watch it. The live reaction is great. The thing I like about David is that he always tries to steel man the argument, and he always kind of puts it into the sort of everyman grab. Even though he's a very sophisticated thinker, he's very pedantic about walking through and making sure people understand. Steve, the Joe Kent allegations, the allegation that he's leaking. Yesterday, you said that the story is that he gave you technology. This is from John Solomon. Folks, if you've been paying attention to this show, last Friday, we talked about how John Solomon and his outfit is doing hit jobs on behalf of the FBI director, and I've got it on tape. We showed you that he's a dishonest actor, that he's working on behalf of the regime, not because he's trying to get to the truth, not because he's giving you just the news, but because he's actually giving you just whatever the crafted narrative is. And so I did that on purpose. And all of that stuff is related because I know what a hit job looks like. And I know that they're doing a hit right now on Joe Kent. You know that, and you've known it for quite a while because the story has been circulating for how long now, would you say?
I will tell you that the genesis of the story began back in October, and then it was released in fervor that the and you'll see, Kyle, you'll see me pause more often than I usually am wont to do during this interview. The story itself began to take shape as early as November of last year, because very, very quickly, the intelligence community was in panic damage control. That includes both CIA and FBI and U.S. Capitol Police. Mm-hmm. And between those three entities, it was FBI taking the lead in terms of communicating the damage control. because, Kash Patel is a direct appointee of the administration. Therefore, Republicans, conservatives, MAGA in particular, are probably more likely going to accept what is coming out of the Bureau in terms of messaging, that sort of thing. And one of the things that was happening was that individuals from the FBI were making phone calls to the White House, to different members of Congress, to members of the media, and they were leaking information that ODNI, the Office of the Director of National Intelligence, who was DNI is Tulsi Gabbard, and that members of her team, including Joe Kent, were leaking information to me, even illegally leaking technology to me, or giving me access to technology.
This was this is the whisper campaign that was happening in the background, and we started seeing little snippets from underneath the rug that they were spreading this. This story that I just put up is from CBS News. This is from November 25th of 2025, last year. How an innocent woman's name was tied to the J6 pipe bombs. A federal security officer linked to the thwarted J6 pipe bomb attack cleared her name by providing an alibi. Videos of her playing with her puppies at the time. More on that in a minute, folks. The devices were planted. Sources told CBS News. No idea who those sources were. We still don't know. No one's still seen said videos, whatever they are. The FBI has now ruled her out as a suspect in the 2021 plot, according to 3 sources. How interesting. 3 sources, Steve. Were there 3 sources that happened sometime in the last 48 hours that would also be relevant? Because that's the gold standard for journalistic integrity, is that you have 3 sources, is it not?
Yeah. 2 nights ago, I got a call from a reporter at Daily Wire. A conservative, competitive media organization to the Blaze, but friendly. It's a friendly competitor. Sure. I know that the founder of the Blaze, Glenn Beck, and the co-founder of Daily Wire, Ben Shapiro, are friends, and they consider themselves friends. They don't always agree. Sometimes they knock heads online on their podcasts, but by and large, they are friends. And so I get a phone call, 9:30 in the evening, Monday night, in which he wants to get comment from me for a story that he's working on, in which he says, I have received phone calls from 3 different members of the IC. Now, he doesn't say FBI, CIA, DIA, HSI. He just says 3 members of the IC. That's the intelligence community. Mm-hmm. And those 3 individuals, those 3 sources of his, said that you, in fact, were the recipient of leaks from Joe Kent. And I just busted out laughing. I said, yeah, we know about that. He went, what? You know about that? How, you've already been made aware of that? I said, yeah, I've known about it for 3 months or longer. He went, how do you know about it? And I thought that was a little bit presumptive. It's like, I said, well, we have sources in the White House too. We have sources in government in DC, Capitol Hill, Hoover Building, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. I said, we're not unaware. And then I said to him, you can even go just read the press. The press has talked about this for 3 months. And this was before Joe Kent resigned. The press was already circulating and helping to perpetrate this message, or this narrative of a vast division and conflict, feud, as it were, between Tulsi and Kash Patel, Tulsi and John Ratcliffe at CIA, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And basically, the mainstream media stories that were follow-ups to our revelation November 8th of last year were, by and large, if you go and read the stories, only about 20% of, even if our story was the headline of the CNN, CBS, Washington Post, New York Times, blah, blah, blah story, 80% of the rest of the copy was about the conflict between the agencies themselves. It was a hit piece on them.
And there's another one right here. This is Daily Beast, which I think comes from the other side of the aisle. Innocent woman smeared as the bomber after Gabbard's goon DIY probe. And they kind of go out there and they lightly touch on it. But again, when someone starts doing what I learned to call a whisper campaign, which is what this was against you, it was about Joe Kent. It was about Tulsi Gabbard. Folks, one of the things that I keep bringing to your attention, and I'm going to do it again, when you see that your pressure causes someone to squeal, it usually means you're stepping on the tail that's sticking out from underneath the rug. It's the thing that is exposed that is not trying to be exposed. And Steve did that. I've done it a couple of times, and I know when I do it because the pushback is very aggressive. There's a campaign of people trying to discredit you quietly in the space where it would matter. These are the halls of influence, whether they be in DC or other places nearby. And then there's also the outward version of it. And we saw that with this story. The smear was against Tulsi Gabbard, who I think has been effective, who people have had an outsized negative response to. I've never seen the DNI in national news stories ever. I've never read stories about the DNI. It's just a quiet, shadowy kind of thing. Their job is to oversee the IC, and they're quiet professionals. That's what they do. We're hearing about it because Tulsi is pushing back against the IC, which I think you and I have probably comfortably estimated 80% opposes the agenda that Donald Trump ran on. Whether or not he's enacting that is another animal, but that's what he ran on. So she's in hostile territory. Joe Kent was in hostile territory, and trying to move against that hostile territory with what was called the Directors Initiative Group, the DIG, that was upsetting the status quo. That was pushing back against the blob, to go back to your Mike Benz quote. And so when you push back against the blob, they react aggressively. And so you showed something to Americans.
Known caller.
You're
Get that noise?
I did. That was good.
Sorry.
You started pushing back, and we immediately saw that pop out in the public in the smear campaign and the influence, the whisper campaign that was happening in DC, where they went after Tulsi Gabbard. They initiated the moves against Joe Kent, which are now coming to fruition. And as you know, it's always interesting when someone doesn't believe that you know that they're talking about you. It's not like we don't have friends that pick up the phone and say, hey, just heard a wild story about you. Here's what it was. I heard, and in your case, that you received classified technology, even though the exact opposite was true. You used the term with me while I was at the gym yesterday, 180 degrees out of phase. You want to explain what the real truth of what was done?
Yeah, the real truth is no more complicated than this. This was even before the publication of our early November story, pipe bomb related, is that I had accumulated a substantial amount of evidence that required, I believed, because this is not the first time that in investigating a story that I've stumbled upon what I think was a crime. The most recent example of that prior to this one was last summer when I stumbled on a rogue FBI agent in our Congressman Corey Mills series, who was apparently investigating not Corey Mills himself, although that's what she was claiming. Mm-hmm. This was a FBI agent out of Orlando. Although she was telling people that she was investigating Corey Mills himself, the more and the more I looked at it, the more and more evidence I gathered, it really looked like she was investigating the investigators into Corey Mills.
The people that were making the claims of stolen valor.
What's that?
The people that were making claims of stolen valor.
Correct. The actual people that were accumulating, ran a website, were putting together the historical data of the accusations against Corey Mills' stolen valor episodes, plural. And as a result of that, suddenly there was an investigation, and then by this FBI agent's own words, she was no longer interested in stolen valor. Now, can you tell me what you know about this, that, and the other thing? And then suddenly it became very apparent that what she was doing is she was doing nothing more than just looking to know what these people knew and where their investigations were headed. And as a result of that, I did an ambush event on that particular agent last summer. And then we did a story and a couple of stories on this. And I then started the process of calling the FBI and asking for the very specific special agent in charge that would handle this type of scenario if, in fact, a agent had gone rogue. And then we ran it all the way up the chain. I mean, we went all the way from talking to the Orlando field office to the Tampa, the Orlando resident agency to the Tampa field office. I even tried to get this across to Charlotte field office because I live in North Carolina. Then we took it to national intake, and finally, because nobody would respond to this, I happen to have, in my phone, I have Kash Patel's phone number, and I have his personal assistant's phone number.
Mm-hmm.
And it was using those two phone numbers that I finally got their attention and got a response. But I was calling all of these respective field offices and resident agencies specifically for the purpose of reporting what I thought was a crime.
Right. An FBI agent going potentially rogue and doing her own off-the-books investigation. Steve, who is this beautiful young pregnant woman that we see on Instagram in front of me that's modeling a lovely dress?
There are a lot of people that affectionately refer to her as Side Piece Sarah. That's
not a very nice name. She seems like a nice lady.
Yeah, I mean, I'm just repeating what I've heard.
I understand.
And so this has been long-term consort to Congressman Corey Mills. Now I understand.
There was some kind of police report that involved a allegation of bruising on the arm and maybe a physical altercation at some point, some kind of a domestic disturbance. Yes.
It was over a year ago, February 19th. There was a call into the Metropolitan Police Department of Washington, D.C., and domestic violence call. They showed up. A bunch of other aides to Corey Mills showed up. One in particular, this of interesting note. When you say that it's all connected, Corey Mills' chief of staff showed up to this particular thing while the police were there. You know her name, right? Catherine Treadwell, is that right? Do I have that right?
She didn't get hired by the FBI, did she?
I don't think it's been publicly announced yet, but I think that she's the one that has been hired to replace the recently departed Marshall Yates.
So she's filling in, for people's understanding, she's going to take over, it sounds like, the Assistant Director of Congressional Affairs, the FBI's congressional liaison.
Right. That's what sources say. I haven't seen it. Right. I haven't seen an official announcement yet. Mm-hmm. Catherine was there at this event when the police were investigating. There were no charges filed. Essentially, this young lady we see holding her obviously pregnant belly. She was the one that called in the domestic on Corey Mills from his $21,000 a month luxury penthouse in DC. And she was obviously bruised, and as was he. Mm-hmm. And as is, the habit of DC police departments, they sweep things under the rug.
They treat congressmen with a certain degree of hands off, yeah?
Well, they allow things to happen that would never happen at any other police department in the world, unless maybe it was one of their own that was called in on. But
I had a buddy that worked counterintelligence with me, and when I went looking for a friendly inside the DC Metro PD, Steve, the response he gave me was really telling. I'll never forget it, because I was really in a bad spot. We needed to find someone to help me get into a jail cell to do an evaluation of a friend of mine who had a head injury. As far as I could tell, he had been injured in a car accident, and they treated him like he was an alcoholic, which he didn't. That wasn't his issue. And he said, "I wish I could help you. Everybody I know at DC Metro PD is either too fat, too incompetent, or too corrupt to do anything to help you." That was his experience. That was almost a universal experience I found with the FBI and looking into people at DC Metro. It's not very well thought of as far as an agency.
Well, because one of my guilty pleasures is doom scrolling police body cam footage. I didn't. No, I'm serious. I'm totally addicted to it.
I know it is.
And um, and one of the things that I didn't know, and I have learned from this, is that it is the growing trend throughout um, legal jurisdictions throughout the country, whether it's state, county, local, or whatever, is that once a domestic violence call has been made, the victim, the person that made the call, can no longer, when the police show up at the house, they can no longer say, no, I don't want to file charges.
Right.
Sorry, no. I mean, it's by law now, and typically it's state law. If you called and you got a bruise, we're arresting your boyfriend, your husband, your partner. That's it.
Yeah, it needs to be investigated. There's a lot of reasons for why that would be, folks, if you don't understand. But basically,
You no longer
the mere
do that.
presence of the police can sometimes cause a coercive effect for them to be feeling like they're going to be dealing with it later on. So the police are they're carrying out policy. That way the person doesn't have to say, I want to press charges and take that responsibility. The police say the call was made, the action has been taken. Do we have any instinct on who the...
in February 19th, the call was made from this girl in the photograph, and that call went into the Metro PD. They responded, and then on site, she changed her mind, despite obvious marks.
Yeah, has she left Corey Mills and gotten married since then that we know of?
She certainly has not gotten married. She did not leave Corey Mills anytime soon. In fact, she did not leave Mills even a month or so later when it was revealed that he also had an overlapping live-in another friend who he was engaged to.
No big deal.
Florida.
Right. This is the one that resulted in some restraining orders and protective orders. Is that correct?
Yeah, this one who received a protective order against Corey Mills. I was in the courtroom when this was being adjudicated, and I was there to witness this. And this was a beauty queen, Miss United States, who Mills had a long-term relationship with, and who was living at his $12,000 a month beachfront property in Florida. Mm-hmm. And that relationship was happening while this young lady here, Sarah Raviani, I think I said the right last name. Mm-hmm. And she was living in his DC penthouse. And of course, all of this is going on at the same time that he's married. And of course, the person now who is going to be the congressional liaison to the FBI, according to sources, Catherine Treadwell, is also she was Corey's chief of staff. And of course, we know that Corey and Cash have had a long-term personal relationship. And as Corey Mills' chief of staff, Catherine knows and knew about all of these relationships that were running concurrent with her boss. And I mean, it's impossible for her not to have known that. She was basically the fix-it woman for making all of these things work. And it's why she showed up on scene there at the domestic, as it was called in, and among other things. And then I think, and again, now I'm telling you something that, because this is all brand new and I have been distracted by other things, I have not had the opportunity to do the deep dive into Catherine Treadwell, but since you put the graphic back up, it's all connected. Just learned that from a source that Catherine Treadwell's husband, whose last name is Perry, she did not take his last name, was also a 21-year Green Beret and was stationed at Fort Belvoir, where a particular unit that doesn't exist is based out of.
How interesting. This is the same unit that doesn't exist that Joe Kent was a part of, some others as well. So again, the more you dig into this stuff, folks, the more we scratch it, the more it looks like it is in fact connected. That's why I put the sign back up there. I'll just keep tapping the sign intermittently throughout the show. Catherine Treadwell, who you're talking about, the chief of staff for Corey Mills, at least until recently, sounds like taking over a position that is, let's see, she would be taking over the position that was vacated by Marshall Yates. Marshall Yates was a staffer for Tom Massey. So let's do the Tom Massey and let's get into the story that you wrote, if that's okay with you, Steve. You feeling? How you feeling?
I'm great.
Okay, I'm going to keep checking in on you. There's going to be that instinct, that paramedic double check. Tom Massey put this out yesterday in response to your story. I don't know how much you want to get into the background of getting that story released and putting it out there. If you want to, you can. But Tom Massey said, quote, "I believe the FBI arrested the wrong person in the J6 pipe bomb case." That's a pretty strong statement with 1 million views, 15,000 likes on Twitter. Analysis indicates stark physical differences between Cole and the hoodied suspect, including the manner of walking, the body style, the features, the eyesight, the shoe size, the neck length, and mannerisms. I'll let you talk through this story. I think I'm going to put it on the screen for you if that's okay. I covered it yesterday. Yep. It's going to come better from you. And I think there's some things in there that we may dig into that we can open up and unveil for people that are just hyperlinked as it stands. So as put out by Blaze Media, this is the story that we're referring to.
Yeah, as we go through this, it's all connected thing. It's very important to note that the person who Catherine Treadwell is replacing, Marshall Yates, he was probably and easily the single most knowledgeable person on Capitol Hill as general counsel to Thomas Massey. He was on Thomas Massey's staff for 2 years. Mm-hmm. And he was the single most knowledgeable person probably in D.C. on the January 6th pipe bomb. He had spent more time investigating it for his boss than anybody else. Marshall Yates then, when the new administration was formed last year in early 2025, he received the appointment or nomination, or was just flat out, whatever the process is to become the congressional liaison to FBI. He got that position and left Massey's staff to do that very thing.
Yeah.
And because we were all pro Kash Patel at the time, and we were gung-ho, and we were excited that he was nominated and confirmed and got the job, up until he was confirmed and got the job, that we thought also that Marshall, who I had a personal relationship with and who I had participated with in the investigation of the pipe bomber for years, we had sat down together many times in Massey's office looking at pipe bomb videos and things of that nature. So
why do you think he was so interested in was it his job to be interested specifically, or did he have a personal interest there?
It seems that he may have had a personal interest because I forget which congressman right off the top of my head that he was working with before Massey, but he was walking home from his job on Capitol.
Will you say this very, very slowly? And if you're listening right now, I want you to open your ears up. If you have not heard this before, and I can pretty much guarantee you haven't, go ahead and give us your entire attention. If you're doing something else, maybe put that down. Steve, go ahead.
So Marshall Yates was walking home from his job sometime between 7:30 and 8 o'clock on the evening of January 5th, 2021. And he passed a person on the street wearing a hoodie, glasses, a mask, and carrying a backpack on that person's way to the DNC to deliver a suspicious device.
Did you guys hear that?
Fast forward to January of this year, 5 years later, in a congressional hearing, Congressman Loudermilk, in his opening statement in the January 6th investigative subcommittee hearing, said, this is not an exact quote, but it's an accurate paraphrase. He said, the matter still needs to be looked into, that the FBI themselves have stated they have 2 witnesses who say that the January 6th pipe bomber was a white male. And we know that a very engaged, passionate investigator of the January 6th pipe bomb was Marshall Yates, who passed that individual you have on the screen on the streets next to the DNC.
I'm going to say it one more time because it bears repeating. This is one of the things that once I heard it, I went, you've got to be kidding me. The top expert and investigator for Thomas Massie, who was on the J6 pipe bomb investigation, he was working it from the congressional end. His top investigator was a man named Marshall Yates. Marshall Yates was working for someone else on January 5th of 2021. And on his way home, he physically walked by the pipe bomber subject, who was dressed as you've seen in many videos, and testified after the fact, probably very recently after the fact, that it was a white, and they believe male. Yes, is that what you heard? But this was a white person.
That's what the two witnesses that the FBI released this in their report to the congressional committee, that they had two witnesses who had very close contact with the hoodied bomber, and that they reported that the bomber was a white male.
And Loudermilk went on record and said it as well during congressional testimony or during a hearing. We can play you that. You guys can find that. I'll put it over on locals at kyleseraphin.com for those who are interested. And so Marshall Yates walks by the actual pipe bomber. We think that's probably the genesis of the interest. I mean, imagine you walk by, you found out that the person you walked by and you bumped into on the way home from work was a serial killer, and then people went to go hunt a serial killer. They wanted to know who it is. You might have an outsized interest if you had actually walked by that serial killer that same night and you knew it. Is there video evidence that he walked by the pipe bomber on that night that you guys have?
Yes. There's video evidence. The actual moment of their crossing on the street is in a blind spot in the camera, but you see and you can sync, because there's all of these videos, all these Capitol Police timestamp videos are exactly that. They're timestamped. And so you can see the bomber coming this way and you can see Marshall coming this way. They go into a blind spot and then they reemerge over here again.
So Marshall Yates, who was then afterwards working on Tom Massey's staff, was working on attempting to find who this person was, somehow was given a job really without any qualification, if you asked me. If I looked at who should be the congressional liaison, the FBI's assistant director of public affairs or congressional affairs, it's usually an FBI agent for anybody's awareness.
What could have been his qualifications, by the way?
I don't know, but it's an FBI agent that spent a bunch of time in the agency that accurately represents the work that the FBI does to people who otherwise don't understand what it is, and then understands the interplay between investigative matters, intelligence operations, classifications of things. We know that Marshall Yates, or at least we're told this, he was given his classification without even being able to pass the polygraph test that's standard. So
Correct.
That was out of phase. That was something that was atypical. That was done. ProPublica pointed that out a little while ago. We now had a guy, and now he's gone. Now he doesn't work there anymore after a year.
Right. Either he didn't have to take the polygraph and go through the process, or he failed it and was given an exemption.
Both are possible.
Right. And in terms of qualifications, we know that his wife also works for the FBI. I believe that she's staff attorney. I think that she's general counsel there, or, deputy or lower level counsel there. And then additionally, his wife also happens to be the daughter of Fox News morning host Steve Doocy.
No big deal, folks. Here's the thing. When Mr. Yates stepped away from his job at the FBI, the reason that was given was that it was because he wanted to spend more time with family. He's I think 38 years old. He's in his mid to late 30s. And so he wants to spend more time with family, even though his wife continues to work for the FBI, which is a 40 or 50 hour a week job. I don't know how you decide to do that or how that excuse goes out there. That's kind of like I'm stepping away for personal reasons, or I'm worrying about my health and I have to step away, without an actual understanding of why that would be or that it would fit into your time frame. When you're in your 30s and you have a job as the assistant director of an FBI where you probably didn't have any business being there, there's no rational explanation for me that you'd walk away unless somebody told you no longer work here. And so you just resigned. Thanks so much for your resignation. Now we're going to tell you why. You get to decide the reason. Would you like it to be for health reasons, for this, for that? Pick from this little book of reasons. And then we find out that a friendly to Corey Mills, who shows up on domestic violence calls that come into the DC Metro PD, is going to replace him. And it looks to me, and I'm just speculating here, this is no evidence base, it's not a factual statement, it's Kyle Seraphin's opinion, but it looks like you are filling in the blank with one person who may no longer be compromised or maybe is having a crisis of conscience, and you're putting somebody else in that seems to have no problem stepping in the thing, and that doesn't even have to hold their nose anymore because they're so used to doing something. So I don't know what's happening at the FBI, but I do know what's happening to me, and I do know what happened as you guys were trying to put the story out. Do you want to You want to keep going through this? Let's go through the story about what you actually uncovered, because in and of itself, the story is groundbreaking, I think, for the case of Brian Cole Jr. The FBI arrested a person that they previously were told was a white guy, that their former assistant director of congressional affairs physically saw in person and would know. Do you want to bring up the marathon angle at all? Is that interesting? Can we talk about that at all or no?
Let me just say it this way, because
Okay.
as I said, I'm still trying to protect some people's livelihoods,
Yeah, for sure.
friends, people I care about. 2 years ago, I was sitting in Thomas Massey's office. Now, I think, I remember that I originally said it was 2 years ago. I've gone back and looked at records. It may be less than 2 years. In fact, it may have been since Massey's wife died.
Okay.
Because he wasn't there on a particular day that and just to give this a little bit of backstory, it was a very interesting coincidence that on the very day that Massey found out that his wife had died, he was in D.C., his wife was at their home in Kentucky, and I'm walking from the district courthouse in D.C. to Massey's office in the Rayburn building, because I have a 1 o'clock or 1:30 p.m. scheduled appointment with the congressman himself. And I got a call from Marshall Yates, who said, hey, and I'm already on my way. And he said, we're going to have to postpone or reschedule the appointment because the boss just got an emergency phone call from home in Kentucky, and he just lit out of here like a bat out of hell. He's on his way to Kentucky right now. And then, of course, it wasn't until the next day that we all learned that Massey's wife had passed away.
Sure.
And so fast forward, at some point between in and around that, I was sitting in Massey's office itself. The congressman was not there. We're sitting on a sofa, coffee table in front of us, laptops open, and Marshall and I are looking at videos of the pipe bomber. And Marshall Yates says to me and shows me the reasons why we needed to be looking for a marathon runner. I'm like, okay. And this had not even crossed my mind in my own investigation and research into this situation. And why a marathon runner? And we began to look at and show or discuss the video. And by the way, I should say this for everybody. We have a lot more video evidence than the few seconds of frame rate reduced, altered video that the FBI has deigned to release to the public. I mean, Kyle, they even released another 15 seconds or so of video back in September or October of last year, re-upped the $500,000 reward, and they added additional video of the hooded bomber than to what they had already released for the public, over the 4 years prior. And that was to help the public call in more tips. If you recognize this, if you see something, say something. If you recognize something in this additional video that we've given you. I mean, the entire amount of video the FBI has released is less than a minute.
Right.
We have everything that Capitol CCTV captured. That's over 20 minutes of the bomber's roughly 45-minute trek. And the FBI claims in their own documents and release to Congress that they have 30,000 pieces of video evidence. Now, that means that they've been able to do and capture things that we can't do as the media. They've been able to go out and capture probably all the residential and business ring cam video, security cameras, private security camera videos, but they claim they have probably car cameras, probably Capitol Police and Metro PD, squad car video camera. They claim
dash cams, security cams, non-governmental cameras, residential cameras, cloud-based cameras, you name it. If the FBI could find it and look like there was a camera somewhere on the route, almost definitely they went out there and tried to scrounge it up. They did a big canvas and walked around and then tried to stitch it all together. So it sounds
Even
like they have a ton.
satellite. I don't know, but the bottom line is that they claim 30,000 pieces, not 30,000 minutes or 30,000 hours, but 30,000 pieces of video evidence.
Yeah.
I don't have that. And maybe they're exaggerating and they call pieces how many frames they have. I don't know.
Sure.
I don't have an explanation on that. But the bottom line is that I've seen at the very least 20, probably 50 times more video related to this than the FBI has released to the public. And one of the things that Marshall Yates pointed out to me was the shoulder shrugs and the stretches, and the at one point doing this that the bomber does as the bomber rounds the corner there at the Capitol Hill Club, which is right next to the RNC, actually heading to the alleyway where the bomber would eventually drop the second bomb. And what he said is, he said these are signs. These shoulder movements and stretches are signs of repetitive injury that is really common among long distance runners. The millions
just from the way that they hold their body and the way that the impact of running.
Yeah. And that this is a common thing. It's called marathon runner's shoulder. And so I'm a clue or a consideration never crossed my mind. But then, of course, after he said it, it never left my mind. And
and so, for whatever it's worth, Marshall Yates and hold on, looks like your camera's kind of glitching. Our connection's not as good.
Yeah. Subsequently and recently, I've sent Marshall a private message and said, I delivered up to you a marathon runner on a silver platter, yet you're still standing behind the arrest of a young man who clearly is not even an athlete and can't be an athlete. His body will not allow him to be an athlete.
Right. Yeah, that makes sense. Steve, I've lost control of the scenes and the broadcast software. I can know. Yeah, we're still on, but I no longer can change. There it goes. Now it's going to do 5 inputs all at once. Oh, how funny. Yeah, that's frustrating. I couldn't get it to go between the scenes. We had some sort of a glitching stall. Anyway, somebody's looking at what we're doing. All right. So people asked, just so I can say it again, why a marathon runner? Very specifically, it was the style of stretching, the things that were observed. So now we have Marshall Yates, who was Tom Massey's chief investigator, expert inside his office, who eventually ended up as the FBI's assistant director to the congressional affairs and was the liaison back and forth between the Bureau and Congress. That person gave 2 critical pieces of information and then was in the inside and no longer is. Believed that it was a white person from the night of.
Do not know that he was one of the eyewitnesses.
Got it. You're making the educated assumption, knowing that he physically walked past the pipe bomber.
That he could be one of those.
That he could be one of those witnesses, and it would make sense. Okay, so that's part one. And then the second is that he physically told you, based on his observations, his experience in watching athletes and so on, that he believed that was a repetitive stress injury manifesting in a stretch of which you've stared at that 40 minutes of footage or 35 minutes of footage you have countless times over and over. I know you've just, picked over it again, looking at different frames, corners of the frame to try to find information. So let's do more on this story if we can. Let's get into your story, the specifics of it. How about your methodology? You called it sort of old school gumshoe style detective work. And let's talk about what it was that you thought you could prove and then how you went about proving it in methodology so people can understand what this story is all about. By the way, it's in yesterday's comments if you guys want to go read the story yourself, and we'll do it again. If you're seeing any glitching on the screen, it's not on our end, unfortunately, nothing I control, but I think we can show you we can show you at least the story and the parts that he's talking about. So Steve, I'm going to let you just narrate through this piece.
The first thing is having spent so much time with the video evidence that we have, you begin to develop a visual impression that is characteristic of many, many traits. Okay, one of the first impressions that we have is that I always believed that the bomber was either an effeminate male
Mm-hmm.
or a lesbian. There are people's, we'll just call it their neurological wiring that often affects their physical portrayal and aspects of their physicality. I'm not saying anything that basic law enforcement forensics is not aware of, even to the point of somebody, for instance, if you meet someone on the street or at an event or football game or wherever, and a family, and one of the family members has Down syndrome, you know it immediately by the appearance of the individual with Down syndrome.
Sure.
We also did a lot of research into the physical characteristics of individuals who have the type of autism and severe OCD that is being diagnosed in Brian Cole Jr. And then there are physical characteristics that manifest themselves in that. There's no other way to say it, but there's
a physiognomy to it, or whatever the hell they call it.
Types of sexual orientation that then manifests itself in physical portrayal and presence.
Yeah. I'm going to interrupt you for just 1 second here, Steve, because people are watching your camera glitch. They say it's giving them like max headroom, sort of flashbacks. Because
I'm seeing it on your version. I'm not seeing it here, so I don't know what's going on.
No, it's on my end right now. I've completely lost control of the broadcast software. It's not responding in any way, shape, or form. I've done probably 400 plus broadcasts from this laptop alone, and this laptop handles it no problem. So we're now... Yeah, I don't know how this is going to play out. I don't even know. Like the chat is going to be glitchy. Everything is just getting wild on my end. And yeah, we'll keep going. I'm just making people aware of what's happening.
Your app you have open, and maybe it's just a memory overload.
Working on it.
Yep. Is it affecting audio or just the video?
The audio's fine, it sounds like, from everything I can tell. So we're going to just keep...
I don't mind being max headroom.
Yeah, I don't mind it either so much. I just want people to understand that we're not deliberately trying to make you trip out or relive through some MTV situation, but we're doing the best we can do.
So after spending years with this video, I developed many ideas, and just from they're just impressions. They're not facts. They're not absolutes. There's certainly nothing that I would even take to a courtroom at all. A lot of things, a lot of impressions I wouldn't even write a story about. I'd talk, I don't mind having a discussion with you about them, throwing things out there.
Mm-hmm.
But another one of the things that I've noticed and seen from, hundreds and hundreds of hours of watching that 20 minutes worth of video is that the person walking around delivering the two devices was a person that had no concern and no fear whatsoever. This individual never, spent time looking over their shoulder or backtracking and wondering if anybody was walking, following, none of the physical characteristics of a person who was doing something wrong, knew that they were doing something wrong, and therefore thought that they were totally protected. Somebody carrying around two bombs, showing no sign of fear, guilt, anxiety, totally comfortable in
what
that.
Did you take that to mean when you were looking at it?
When you now look at the entirety of the evidence that we have, and the way, for instance, that the Secret Service reacted and responded after learning and being told by two Capitol Police plainclothes counter surveillance officers who found the device at the DNC, And then the Secret Service agents who were sitting in an SUV 10 feet from the bomb finished their sandwich for 2.5 minutes before getting out. The only thing there's only two possible explanations for that, Kyle. Either the Secret Service were in on the conspiracy, or the counter surveillance officer from the Capitol Police walked up and said, hey, we're in the middle of a training exercise. We've placed a suspicious device over here. Nothing to worry about. Go ahead and finish your lunch. No big deal. And
we're going to have a reaction to it in a minute, and we're going to play out the scenario that we're doing.
Right. And we're going to get all of it on camera, and we're going to go through the steps and everything. And then they didn't go through the steps. Then nobody did anything by standard operating procedure. Nothing was done properly. The traffic wasn't stopped. The foot traffic wasn't stopped. Families walked right by the bomb, and nobody steered them away. They didn't immediately go to the corners of the street and say, no, you can't go down here. Nothing. They didn't stop. There's a train 30 feet from the bomb, a train trestle. They didn't stop the train traffic there.
Right.
From the metro train. They did nothing right at all. All of that leads you to more questions, but it's like, was this an averted training exercise? Was this something that this plays very well, folks who are listening right now? I'll put the chat on the screen for a second if I can control it. By the way, I got control back for a minute. We'll see what that looks like. It's still a little glitchy, it looks like. George Hill talks about concentric circles and alternating left and right circles that go against each other, and so you'll get the experience of one person's going clockwise and they're working on their story, and then the alternative op is on the outer circle and it's going counterclockwise, and then somebody else is doing it. So various different people are kind of running things the way. He lost it again. Of course, I can't control the the video. In any case, that is commensurate with a good operation where there is disinformation and everybody thinks that what they're doing is important. Everybody is, executing their piece of the pie, and they all think that whatever their operation is that they're executing is the operation. And when in fact that if you were to zoom out, you would see that there are alternating operations that all are essentially muddling the waters. It's compartmented and it's siloed so that people are not aware of any of the grander plans. This is a classic sort of intel, physical operation in the real world. That's how you do it. Yeah. And there will be a day that I will get deeper into this. I mean, like really granular on this. Yeah. Things that we have evidence of that I can't yet speak about because I care about people's children.
Let's do what you do know. You guys went out and measured some shoes. You've got some AI generated pictures where it looks like, and correct me if I'm wrong here, but looking at the pictures, even in this sort of like montage that's up at the top of the screen, the essentially what it looks like is AI maps and then tracks data, a single pixel on a frame, and it shows the difference between maybe like the clavicular notch and the chin. So you have a distance of a neck. It goes and highlights in different colors. I'm seeing basically looks like long bones. So you can't change the length of your humerus in your arm or your radius in your ulna. So the distance between your elbow and your wrist is going to be fixed, even if it moves around in space. The orientation may be different, so it'll look shorter from an angle, but you can track these things. Same thing, length of femur, the length of your tibia and your fibula, your tibia and your fibula, rather, the length of your foot. So from where the connection of the ankle is all the way out to the end of the toes or whatever. These are fixed things. And using AI, you can basically map those in 3D space as it moves around. So you get this sort of like skeletonized, skeleton, because we're all just basically a skeleton with a meat sack on top of it. You can see the skeleton underneath based on how it moves. And you can't hide that once you have the certain, mapping and you got enough video of it. Am I accurately describing what those pictures show?
Yeah, that's exactly it. And so this is where I was beginning 10 minutes ago and laying the groundwork to the answer for your question, because I'm trying to give people as much evidence as I can give here, and a look into the thought process of somebody who has investigated something for 5 years and didn't just take their opinion from a fucking influencer on X. And by the way, I say that angrily and with emphasis and with the F-bomb because of so many people that have attacked out of ignorance. They loose their opinion into social media with no knowledge and no work on the subject whatsoever, only because they have taken and formulated their opinion from their favorite influencer who has no knowledge and done no work on the subject whatsoever, and maybe even a really large-scale influencer who themselves have no knowledge and have done no work on the opinion whatsoever, but has received a phone call from the 7th floor of the FBI Hoover building telling them what they need to say. Okay.
These are people who have not gone into the space and interviewed people who talked to Brian Cole, which at this point, you feel thoroughly that you've debunked the story that he could have done it. I'm showing him on the screen right now. This is from the interview footage. You guys compared 48 minutes worth of body cam footage, something you love doom scrolling, it sounds like. And then also the pipe bomb footage, you guys have mapped against it. You've been able to compare shoe size. They don't match. Neck length, it doesn't match. Gait, it doesn't match. Some really, really specific things. He's probably shorter than the pipe bomber actually was. The FBI gave themselves some wiggle room that it was someone who was 5'7", plus or minus an inch, 0.1. And that doesn't seem to match either when you see this guy in real life. And you've talked to people who know him in real life, that dealt with him daily, that lived near him. So go ahead.
Yeah. So the groundwork, all of this is stated accurately by you, Kyle, and the groundwork of the years of spending time with the video was that, and this is the answer from where we started 15 minutes ago, is that when they arrested Brian Cole Jr. and we saw his first photo on the screen, on national news or social media, wherever you saw it, I went, that's not the bomber. It can't be. I didn't need software. I didn't need AI. I didn't need gait recognition. I've spent so many hundreds of hours watching this person move in the night, stealthily, confidently, athletically, walking for a couple of miles, back and forth and around, circling, retracing their footsteps from 7:34 p.m. till 8:18 p.m. when the bomber disappeared through a hidden secret gate that could not be found on Google Maps.
Yeah. And folks, we did shows on this at the time, so you guys can go back and watch. Steve and I walked through the Google Map, the Google Earth version of this route, and you can see there's no way to tell from a map without having firsthand knowledge that you can walk through this thing that looks like it might be a gate or it might not be anything. But if you walked right up to it, it wouldn't be apparent to you. There's a lot of holes in these things. The timeline doesn't line up. The purchases don't make sense. The confession doesn't make sense. The information that the FBI and the DOJ are dropping into the charging document are absurd. Is there any chance that these people, you think, Steve, could take this to court and feel like they're going to walk away with a win in Washington,
no.
D.C.?
And in fact, the government, DOJ, FBI, CIA, Capitol Police have only one fear, and that's that this goes to court. Why?
Can we talk about the legal dynamic that's going on? Are we at liberty to talk that at all? I mean, I can estimate it from the outside without having any special knowledge, but I don't want to put anybody in a bad spot.
Yeah, I won't put anybody in a bad spot. I'll just give a 60-second summary here. Is that the family has either retained or is in the process of retaining a very competent law firm out of Nashville, Tennessee. These are guys that are accustomed to winning cases. They don't lose, and they are very confident in what they have and very confident in what they're going to be bringing and presenting to the government and to the court. And by the way, when we say the court and the government, technically that's the DOJ, that's the prosecutors, that's referred to as the government. The court is referred to as the judge. All right.
Yeah.
And they're very confident. There's another law firm working with the family out of Atlanta who's more inclined to be looking at the civil rights aspect of this. They are the counsel who have not so much stood up for Cole's innocence like the Nashville firm is, but are more working on just getting him out of jail by any means possible, which of course the family needs and Cole certainly requires, because he's borderline, 5 minutes to Wapner, autistic.
So just to restate that again, there's basically two law firms that are in play, one of which is doing Perry Mason and willing to disprove the case that the government has brought. And the other one is looking for the best possible outcome. And if that means that we got to play ball with the government, but it means the man gets out and he gets to be on, get his freedom back, then they're willing to play that game. And those are not necessarily at odds at each other, folks. They can walk those two routes at the same time and get the best possible outcome for the client. But they do have different tactics in order to justify or in order to achieve that same goal. And is that correct? Am I saying it right?
Yeah, well stated. And so with that in mind, when you hear contradictory statements, or you see contradicting filings by the two law firms, that's the reason for that. For instance, the most recent filing is this idea that the Atlanta law firm has floated, is that the January 6 pardons apply to Brian Cole Jr.'s actions on the 5th. Now, they're still not saying he did it, but if he's the accused and he's accused of what is being called the January 6 pipe bombs, right?
Yes.
We don't call them the J5 pipe bombs. We call them the J6 pipe bombs.
Right.
We call the individual who planted them the J6 pipe bomber. We don't call the individual the J5 pipe bomber. Why do we call them the J6 pipe bomber? Because the J6 pipe bombs, those suspicious devices, created the diversion on the front lines of the battle between the rioters and the Capitol Police that deplenished the Capitol Police resources, as those resources were diverted to both the RNC and the DNC just minutes prior to and after 1 o'clock, when the gavel dropped inside the congressional chambers for the confirmation of the Electoral College vote.
I'm going to do a little reset here. We're about 90 minutes in talking. Steve, first of all, folks, if you're just joining us, I see that we have a number of people that probably are new to the stream. So welcome to the program. Thanks for joining me. I'm talking to Steve Baker, and Steve is an investigative journalist. He's a former professional musician who dabbled in investigations for a long period of time. He's got a very interesting history. You can find more interviews with him on my channel over the years. He's become an expert on J6. He was a J6er himself. He was arrested by this FBI. I would say they're the same. I don't make a big distinction. And he has essentially found himself in the place where he chooses truth over comfortable. This is what we do. Steve has been running down the story of the January 6 pipe bomber and other January 6 related malfeasance for years now, going, I guess, about 5 years since the original date thereof. And he's worked as an investigative reporter for The Blaze for a good chunk of that. You're seeing some glitching on the screen that's outside of my purview. I don't have the ability to control it. The software is actually getting away from me, and I don't know why that is, and I'm not going to make speculations. Maybe the laptop is failing after being very successful and working for a long time, and maybe we have someone that's playing with the stream. That's always a possibility, because that's the world we're living in right now, and I'm going to show you more evidence of that. We've been talking about the story that he just released. Congressman Thomas Massie mentioned that this is very possible that the FBI has the wrong guy. I'm very convinced of it, and I have been since Steve's first stories. I think that he was originally correct with the story that has been retracted by The Blaze. We're going to get into that. And we're going over a theme, which I think is worth talking about, which is that it's all connected. The hit job and the claims that Joe Kent was a leaker and a known leaker and a chronic leaker within his position as the director of NCTC, the National Counterterrorism Center. The claim that was made, and a story that was being floated in a whisper campaign and potentially about to go loud from Daily Wire, is that Steve Baker was the recipient of said classified documents and technology. But Steve has both the physical evidence to back up and the timeline to show that it was in fact the opposite, that Steve brought them the information, that Steve brought them the technology, brought them his investigation that he'd been doing for months and years prior, and that they just simply evaluated the stuff that was going on, that he had his own independent options and his own technology. And in fact, the technology that Joe Kent was accused of leaking, am I fair saying that they don't even have that technology? I think that's what I heard from you yesterday on the Viva Fry podcast.
Yeah. If we're going to go ahead and crack this one open, just let's go back to something we were talking about over an hour ago, and that was the fact that we have known for months that the FBI individuals, at least one individual who we've discussed at length here, Marshall Yates, has made several phone calls specifically to not only discredit the story that we came out with on November 8th, but also to participate in the blob, protecting the blob activities, being a good foot soldier for his new boss at the FBI. And one of those things that was being shared around Capitol Hill, at the White House, and to various members of the media was that some element, it originally started out with some element of ODNI, and some even said it was Tulsi, some named Joe Kent directly. But the bottom line was ultimately it finally got distilled down into a narrative that we were able to isolate and focus as the primary narrative, was that Joe Kent, and I quote, gave me the name of a person. That's a lie. And secondly, and I quote, gave me illegally access to government software to assist in my investigation of the J6 pipe bomber. That is a massive lie. It's a provable lie on so many levels. We can prove it by timelines, and we can also prove it by the key swipe cards at the National Security Complex where ODNI is housed. But also we can prove it by virtue of the fact that Joe Kent's agency, National Counterterrorism Center, NCTC, does not have that type of technology. They don't even have that software. And in fact, because I took my pile of evidence to ODNI instead of to the FBI and instead of HSI, because nobody trusts FBI for anything, by the way, in government. Hello out there for those of you who, as you said, they're the same. Those of you who think it changed because you think the FBI changed because Cash fired less than 1% of the workforce, fired, reshuffled, reassigned. You think that changed the agency? No, it didn't. By contrast, Tulsi came in and fired over 40% of ODNI. Wonder why they don't like her.
Let's also just kind of add in there since I've got the slide up, or I've got the banner here, it's all connected. If you guys listen to any of the recent discussions, there was a Michael Schellenberger piece that was used to slander Joe Kent yesterday, claiming that he was trying to get Tyler Robinson, the alleged shooter of Charlie Kirk, off, and that he would testify in front of the defense if asked. That's the thing you do if somebody subpoenas you to testify. Saying that you'll testify if somebody subpoenas you is just saying that you'll comply with a lawful order from the court. It doesn't mean anything specific or that you want an outcome. But here's the other fun thing, and I'm going to speculate here. So, Steve, this is just Kyle looking at these things and seeing the world that existed. The question about what happened with Charlie Kirk, which is now being brought into the story about Joe Kent, who is being slandered about giving technology to the man that's on the screen with me, Steve Baker. The question about what happened with Charlie Kirk doesn't mean that there wasn't a lone shooter. The question has always been, why did that lone shooter decide to do what he do? How did he plan it? Did he have other people that helped radicalize him and move him along? That the FBI style playbook where they give you a lot of encouragement on a bad idea that you might have and tell you that you might want to be able to do it and that they'd stand behind you. And if so, were those real people? Were those people American and were they domestic or were they foreign? And Joe Kent clarified the other day while talking to Schellenberger, he's talking about foreign actors of any kind, whether they be a nation state actor or a non-nation state actor, terrorist cell, or you name it, or a private individual that wanted to move something along to destabilize the U.S. And so that ties into stories that we've talked about here, which Steve Baker has covered at length. And that possibility just connects, and I think that anybody at ODNI would be aware of it, the possibility of Chinese server farms, which were not investigated by the FBI, but in fact were investigated by the Secret Service. And that is a pervasive understanding that as you look into the government right now and you look at our federal law enforcement, there is a massive distrust of the FBI on things that are high priority, of high sensitivity, and it's because the change that people thought was happening didn't happen. 1% of the workforce does not change culture. The culture of the FBI is still what it was when I left it. And they're still willing to go after Catholics. They're still willing to point out people who have stepped up as whistleblowers. They're willing to talk to people who are dissidents and look at them as enemies. And God forbid anybody embarrass the Bureau, or now even embarrass the person that is the FBI director, no matter what dumb shoes he's wearing. So this connection becomes very personal for the people that are involved in it. And I think you're seeing that personal reaction. Nothing for nothing, Steve. We saw Dan Bongino confronted in a hallway the other day coming out of an event. And his reaction was not professional, not a man who's been in the public life, who's been, challenged many times by reporters and others, who've had adversarial interviews or talked to, Geraldo Rivera and gotten emotional about something that was non-personal. This was a man who's been attacked by his reputation because his reputation is now inextricably linked with an FBI that is woefully corrupt, and very obviously so. And this story is a great crowning example of it. I wanted to kind of sum it up for people to understand why when I say it's all connected, I'm going to give you another one too. And it's going to, I don't like holding on to the bombshell piece of it, but it's something, you dropped some information yesterday nobody expected. I'm going to do the same thing for this audience here. Guys, there's a lot going on behind the scenes to try to slander good people. And the intel op is everybody who's taking information are taking it from the lowest information, but the most, motivated to push a narrative. And that narrative is bullshit. And it's been bullshit since you started working this case, you started working on this investigation for your work. And by the way, that is what you do for a living. You're not some random guy. You're not a blogger who hangs out there. You're a professional now who's paid for by an organization that they recognize what it is you're doing. They also recognize the danger of what you're doing. And so kudos to Blaze for putting it out there and for doing the right thing as they do. And I hope they continue to be brave about it, because if they don't, people will recognize that. There's a reason why you have such a following, and why that follows your name opens doors for other people, even, which you've shared with me privately. Just people are happy to see friends of Steve Baker. And when I meet people, they ask me how you're doing, because your work is impactful.
Thank you. And also I'm just going to pause here for a personal moment, and that is to say thank you for the response that I received after my appearance with David yesterday. Viva Fry. Not only did I hear from the suspendables, but I also heard from groups within the intelligence community and the Defense Department, or Department of War, whatever they call it now, that are actually fasting and praying today for me. And thank you, all of you, for that. And Joe Kent for a moment.
Let's do it.
Give you a scoop today. This is something that I have not revealed publicly. One of the things that I learned, and you know this all too well yourself, is once you get really deep involved in January 6th, everybody involved in January 6th thinks somebody else is a Fed. Okay. Yes. And this is from a derisive standpoint. I mean, if you say the wrong thing, you don't agree with the outcome, you don't agree whether somebody's guilty, innocent, did this, did that, revealed this, spoke about that or not, if your narrative does not comport with their narrative, your opinion does not comport with their opinion at all, and you say something different, which is a contradiction on social media, well, then you yourself are an info op. Obviously, you're a Fed. You're being paid by the Fed. I've been accused of being a Fed 1,000 times, thousands of times, probably. And by thousands of times, it's usually the same people saying it over and over and over and over and over.
Right.
Small group. But it racks up a lot of views, a lot of clicks, a lot of shares. Shortly after the formation of Tulsi's DIG, the Directors Initiative Group, which was actually a mandated project from Trump himself, from the White House, to investigate the weaponization of the 18 intelligence bureaus, agencies within the federal government against an American people. And one of the things that they were specifically mandated by the president to investigate was the weaponization of the intelligence community against J6ers. I'm not the expert on January 6th, but I am one of them. And with not necessarily even expert on any one particular topic, but the grand scheme of things. And I know personally more information than the DIG, the Directors Initiative Group, in the total of all the people at the DIG knew. This one individual carries with himself more information about January 6th than they would be able to accumulate in 4 years. Because I've already done the work. They have to. They're starting from ground zero, right? So I got a call, series of calls from individuals at ODNI asking me if I would help the DIG. Now, that in and of itself does not make me a Fed. They were looking for my expert opinions so that they would have a starting point and know indeed what to look at and what not to waste their time on looking at, right? As they preparing information and evidence for the president himself per his directive and per the directive of the director. That's why they call it the Directors Initiative Group, Tulsi Gabbard. One of the individuals that called me was a man that I had never met before by the name of Joe Kent. I didn't know who he was, but it was basically just an introductory call in which we had been introduced by somebody else in ODNI, and thought that we should have a conversation. And we did. It was very pleasant. This was over a year ago, actually probably right at exactly a year ago this time. And then I received a call from somebody who was, I actually don't know what his official title was, but he answered directly to Tulsi, and he was the guy who ran the DIG. All right. Mm-hmm. I was actually invited, and here's the scoop. I was invited to not only become a member, not just a contributing outsider or somebody that they could ask questions of. I was actually invited to become a member of the DIG, which was then turned into an invitation to become an SGE. Now, the country learned what an SGE is. That's a special government employee when Trump brought on Elon Musk, to be an SGE and run the Doge campaign, right? So we all learned we all had to look it up. I didn't know what an SGE was. You did. You've been in government. And so we learned what an SGE is. It's a temporary paid position. And in the context of working with the DIG, I would have had to go through security clearance process and all of that in order to take that position.
Sure.
I was flattered by it, and I was really, wow. The things I could learn, the things I could see, what I would know. It would be an investigative journalist, pardon the expression, wet dream.
Yeah.
To have that kind of opportunity. And so I went to my editor-in-chief at the time, Matt Peterson, at the Blaze, and I told him what had been offered to me, and he said, take it. Because it's only, it's only for a third of the year. You only have to put in 130 days in a 365-day year. Not only that, I would have had the opportunity for double dipping on the end because it's a paid position.
Yep.
So I would have still been an employee of the Blaze. I would have then had an income from the government for a period of 1 year, or the equivalent, or 130 days, however I worked it out. So I could put in 2 days a week with the DIG here and 3 days a week with the Blaze, or, and alternate it, or a week here and a week back at the Blaze, however it worked out. But I would have had extraordinary access to information, much of which I would never have been able to publish because I would have been able to see classified documents. And, but it was all going to be related my job, if I had taken it, would have been specifically to work with that element of the dig that was looking at January 6th weaponization. And yeah.
Can I make an interruption here in this story?
Yeah.
I've got the story from the Washington Post, which was part of the cover job. I showed you 2 articles previously that said CBS, and then there was another one from Daily Beast that were taking the smear at ODNI. They were taking the smear at Joe Kent and at Tulsi Gabbard. This is the one that was written by the Washington Post. And in it, which I have on the screen right now so people can read along, it's going to answer 2 questions. One, there's an ongoing discussion right now in our YouTube chat on whether or not Glenn Beck owns the Blaze and is giving you your marching orders, so you're a Zionist. And I want to clear that up because it's actually addressed in this piece, and the Washington Post got it wrong. It's not necessarily commonly known, but as a Blaze employee, you know much more about it, and I do as well. I'm going to read a couple things because this information that you're discussing is actually fairly public since Washington Post covered it. And they have good coverage. The memo, which was a memo written about information that you brought to them, was written by Paul McNamara, a shadowy Army veteran tasked by Gabbard with running her Directors Initiative group. The unit was known as the DIG, and it's dedicated to a series of MAGA talking points, including targeting the so-called weaponization of intelligence against Donald Trump and his allies and, quote, rebuilding trust in the intelligence community. I can assure you that those are all real problems, and those are really useful priorities. They were also on Agenda 47, which I've harped on this show. Sources told CBS News. So now you've got the Washington Post laundering the sources from CBS without actually getting them themselves, and they're taking CBS at their word for journalistic integrity, that McNamara inserted himself into high-profile FBI hunt for the attempted pipe bomber who left 2 devices outside the DNC and the RNC on the eve of January 6th. The extraordinary series of events started when the Office of the Director of National Intelligence, ODNI, received a tip from what it described as a U.S. citizen, whose sources told CBS was a member of the media company and about potential wrongdoing of former Capitol Police officer who now works in the intelligence community. It's highly unusual for a member of the mainstream media to pass a tip to ODNI. You're talking about that process right now.
Correct.
And the information that you brought them was so valuable that they were offering to make you an SGE. I want to read a little bit further on this if it's all right. Is this all above board and kosher so far?
This is all accurate, actually.
All right. McNamara, sources told CBS, investigated the tip himself, accessed confidential files, and obtained the woman's social security number. He then drafted a memo that outlined the allegations of her potential criminal activity and circulated it within the intelligence communities. But the classified, unsigned document got leaked. The ODNI told the Daily Beast. The woman was then named by the Blaze, which is owned by the conservative radio host Glenn Beck, as the bomber in the article, which caused the MAGA firestorm. I'm going to let you go right now.
Yeah, that's the part that where the beginning of inaccuracies began. That it's so it is. We're talking about 2 or 3 paragraphs here that are very, very accurate in terms of the historical formation of the dig, why it was with the little bit of the CBS editorialization about it just being a MAGA priority and but of course Glenn hasn't owned the Blaze in 2.5, 3 years, and as of this year, January of this year, he's completely separated from the Blaze. And then people go, oh no, I see Glenn on the Blaze TV every morning, or I hear him on the Blaze radio network every day. And it's because the Blaze is now paying him to license his content, to be on the network.
And would it be fair to say that Blaze basically rents the space from Mercury Arts or whatever the parent holding company is? So they're paying Glenn rent, but they now own their own content they generate. Glenn generates his own content and then sells it to them in a like syndication.
They are completely non-aligned now, and so.
I bring that up because our chat is having this back and forth. I should put it on the screen because it's kind of funny. They're discussing what the Google results are, what the Gemini AI bot tells you about who owns it. But at the end of the day, Glenn Beck is no longer he has influence in so much as he's a large program on it, and he can obviously piss people off or tell people what he wants to do or not do. But he doesn't run or operate the Blaze. It's run by an independent group. Do you have an idea of what the ownership group is that actually owns it? I don't think that's a particularly.
This is a typical privately held corporation with board of directors and CEO and president and all of that.
And none of those people are Glenn Beck.
None of those people are Glenn Beck now.
Okay. You don't answer to Glenn Beck.
Nope, I don't answer to Glenn.
Just wanted to make sure people kind of understood that. Look, it's background. It was brought up in this story. The Washington Post can get it wrong. It'd be easy for a member of the audience to get it wrong. It's like sort of common knowledge that's inaccurate.
Going back to now the meat of this is that when I started receiving this invitation from the dig to be a part of it and actually then even be PE, which meant a paid position with the dig, and approved by my editor-in-chief at the time in order to do that. And then despite the financial reward that I would receive from that, despite the unprecedented access that I would have to knowledge, working knowledge, especially if I was able to pass and clear and get my security clearance and allow me to see things that I would never be able to see otherwise, despite that attractiveness of somebody as curious as I am, the more I thought about it, the more I thought that ethically I couldn't do it.
Mm-hmm.
And in fact, then when these yahoos online accused me of being a Fed, yeah, I would have been a Fed.
Yeah, that's fair.
So I turned it down. I did not take the offer. We discussed at length the idea of how to make that work within my own moral and ethical boundaries as a journalist, but also contributing to their efforts in the manner in which I was originally approached, was to help them get a head start because of what I knew and what my associates knew. And, you know, my partner in crime, his name should always be uttered, and every time my name is uttered, and it's Joe Hanneman, except when people are saying bad things about me, they shouldn't say bad things about him because he's an incredibly great human being.
Really is.
And in those discussions, we came to the conclusion, okay, well then, you know, if they need to know something, they can call and ask. If it's a big topic, I can go in and sit down with them, which I have done. I've been to the headquarters more than once and sat down with them.
This is all in relation to what you know about the pipe bomb, how you can help orient the things that they are interested in looking into, weaponization of government, et cetera, all the things that you brought, you're willing to share with them, but you don't need a paycheck.
January 6th in total, you know, all things related to January 6th. I volunteered it to give my time and my effort to that.
Yep. Should we read a little bit more of this story?
What's that?
Should I read a little bit more of this Washington Post story because it gets into the quote unquote debunking?
Yeah, go ahead.
Guys, this is from the Internet Archives. I will put it available to anybody that's watching on YouTube or on Rumble. It'll be in the comments as references for today's show. You guys can read them yourself. The article primarily relied on Gait analysis. They're talking about Steve Baker, Joe Hanneman's article published by The Blaze and then later retracted to make its claim. The woman was voluntarily identified as Shani Kirkhoff in a statement sent by her lawyer, Steve Bunnell, to the Washington Post. She was part of the U.S. Capitol Police Civil Disturbance Unit at the time of the violent riot and testified in the attack in 2022. The argument would be made that because she has testified, she was a person that was working for the government. She is, in that case, a limited public figure, at least for the purposes of discussions of January 6th. The Blaze story, this is the Washington Post saying it, falsely painting Kirkhoff as the pipe bomber was boosted by Trump appointee and infamous election denier Kari Lake. They go ahead and discredit Kari Lake right up front. And far-right Republican representatives Barry Loudermilk and Thomas Massie. Her identity reached Donald Trump too, CBS reported, although it was unclear when. The FBI poured cold water on it, on the report. Quickly after it was published, Deputy Director Dan Bongino wrote in an X post that some of the media reporting regarding prior persons of interest is grossly inaccurate and serves only to mislead the public. And that brings Dan Bongino into the story.
Grossly mislead the public brings Dan Bongino into the I like that. I like the connection. But the so what ended up happening very specifically, and I did cover this on Viva Fry yesterday, is it's no more complicated than this. After years of pulling threads and then an additional several weeks of time really honing in to certain aspects related to the pipe bomber itself, I found something. And myself, Joe, and the people that assist us in this process, the video open source investigator that is known to the world now as Armitage, and some other associates of ours. And look, let's just be perfectly honest. There was a morning where I was driving for a meeting with somebody in DOJ at their private office, not at DOJ headquarters. And I called you. And I said, if I remember your story correctly from back, I think it was in 2023, I said when you were on this surveillance team that was assigned to look at persons of interest 2 and 3 in the pipe bomber case, a week after January 6th, I said, I remember you saying something about you would have your morning briefs or meetings with the whole team at a fire station blocks away from where the address was that you were surveilling. And you said, yes, that's correct. Why do you ask? I'm actually looking for a parking space and talking to you, wireless, but my car phone set up. And you said, yeah, that's true. Why you ask? And I said, I have a particular address of a particular person. And I myself went and looked at Google Maps. And as the crow flies, it's 0.6 miles from that fire station in Falls Church, Virginia. And you said, what's the address? I gave you the address. And to not put too fine a point on it, you lost your shit.
Yeah, that's true.
I mean, you erupted. Mm-hmm. It was
Which
not
was
only
accurately quoted in your story for whatever it's worth.
Yeah,
we're dancing around the words, just if you have to turn it down because you're at work. I think my exact expression to Steve at the time was, they were all fucking in on it.
Yes. Yeah. A string of expletives, F-bomb drops, and utter shock and surprise, but not a surprise because you've known all along that they were in on it. And that this sudden moment in our relationship was a mutual revelation of cover-up. And so all of this evidence taken together, including other things that we did technologically, I took it to the dig. And then the dig was able to, and this has been publicly reported, so I don't have to dance too much around this. The dig, and really, the dig is an ODNI is an investigator of the investigator. The mandate, the congressional mandate of the Office of the Director of National Intelligence is oversight over the operations of the 18 intelligence agencies, bureaus, groups in the federal government. And because there was a specific element related to the intelligence community in what I had discovered, I took it to it fell right in under their purview. They did nothing illegal. They did everything according to their mandate. They followed procedure to the letter in investigating this alert that I brought them. Mm-hmm. Then a memo was drafted and began to be circulated among those who would need to contribute to its content and approve its finalization, which it never did get finalized. A memo, that was still in circulation with red lines and yellow highlights on the memo was then leaked by a Tulsi deputy, a nefarious person within the deep state, prematurely, unapproved.
Mm-hmm.
A real leak was not Joe Kent. But we know who it is.
Mm-hmm.
And this memo was leaked to the FBI, it was leaked to the CIA. I do not know, because I don't know. If I did know, I would say, I don't know how members of the media either saw the memo, received a leaked draft of the memo, or at least were leaked content of the memo, but they wrote about it, as is written in this article that you're referencing right here.
Yep.
Members of mainstream media, New York Times, Washington Post, CBS, they were leaked this memo. 99.9% chance it was leaked by FBI and or CIA, if there's any difference nowadays. And thank you for that smirk. And because it was still being investigated.
Right.
But that leaked memo unlaunched a firestorm within the intelligence community, as it's been described to be by members, by 20 and 30-year members of the intelligence community, unlike anything they have ever seen in the history of the IC. As I said, it got leaked to the public, got leaked to the media. The public learns about it. False accusations are made. Insinuations are made. Calls are being made from the 7th floor of the Hoover building to various leadership in government and in media. Flat out lies. And as I said before, 2 of those lies were that Joe Kent gave me the name of whom we were investigating, and that Joe Kent gave me illegal access to government software to assist in that investigation. Both of them are flat out provable lies, and provable in every which way.
Mm-hmm. Let me just tell people how easy that is. You said timeline, you said mechanics. Like, number one, they can see when you went to the building. They know when you physically went there, when you had the discussions, what rooms you went into when you went there, because those are all trackable once you're on the system. But moreover, you went there with a purpose. The purpose was to disclose information that you were voluntarily bringing to them. And so the creation of the files that you had, and the software utilization, and any kind of documents that were generated that would be on your own computer, and all this kind of information, any source contacts you had previously, those all predate the meetings with ODNI when you physically went there and made them aware of it. And this would all check out. This is not a hard thing to actually run down, especially if you're deciding to be transparent, which you are clearly talking about it right now. So people should know.
Yeah, this is for all the reasons you stated and many others. And of course, the 2 key elements is to the lie is that they gave me or leaked me information. No, I brought them everything that is being lied about in the media that they gave me. No, I brought that to them. And even the technological investigation and evidence that I had, I already had and brought it and presented it to them.
Now, you just said it a second ago, but then your claim is, and I think it's substantiated, is that somebody else, after receiving that information, leaked it within the IC into places that it was not appropriate, because this is what's referred to as an unfinished intelligence product. This is somebody who is now working on it, and there was no reason to share it, but somebody got wind of it, probably somebody who was concerned with the contents that were in there, and sent it to some agencies that would not have had a need to know, except for the fact that they may have needed to know because, as was reported in the Washington Post story that we just read, it named a woman who now worked for one of the other intelligence agencies who answered to ODNI, and they had a vested interest in that story. Again, somebody who was working in the intel community. That's the person of Shawnee Kirkhoff, who went from a force protection job at the U.S. Capitol Police to a force protection job over at CIA. By the way, I did the numbers on that and I looked it up. This is not a very highly paid job. It's not a low paid job either. It's a government job that pays pretty decent with overtime, but it starts like maybe in the 80s at Capitol Police. So I don't know what she was making, but maybe she was, she's maybe a six-figure government employee on the low end, like $100,000 and maybe somewhere in that range with the overtime. It's not a ton of money. And that's going to be relevant in a second because I'm going to share some things with this audience it's never seen before.
Yeah, all of that is accurate, and I didn't say it for reasons of protecting.
Look, yeah, for whatever it's worth, people, we're reading stories that are still archived, that are still available, that are still in print from the Washington Post. There's no retraction from the claims the Washington Post made, which are the official claims, by the way, of our government right now. There's almost no differential when you see some of these stories with what the government position is. They might as well have been written by an Office of Public Affairs at either CIA or FBI, whether that was, what's our guy over at FBI that does that, Ben Williamson, or whether it was Ben Williamson's equivalent over at CIA. They gave official stories, and that story was published. And there are plenty of outlets that are willing to do it to maintain their access. It's like, hey, we're going to give you scoops, and occasionally we're going to need you to run our story without questioning what it is. And, we're going to, and then you go do it. So that's what happened with this story, as far as I can tell. It looks like it might have been, for all of its accuracy and then some inaccuracies, it might have as well have been written by a government agency.
That's correct.
Yeah,
and now you leap forward to Monday night this week, and I get a call from a reporter at Daily Wire saying, hey, I've had 3 independent intelligence community sources have contacted me and have named you as the person that Joe Kent leaked to. Now, let me just, now go ahead, and then I'm going to state something.
Let me say that in a different way.
All right.
A reporter from the Daily Wire called Steve Baker and said, I had 3 people from the intelligence community leak to me that your name is involved in the leak investigation into the technology that allegedly was leaked by Joe Kent. And all of the reporting is based on leaked information. And I'm going to tell you something else, folks, and we've said it here on this program before, but allow you guys to just kind of hone in on this. When I was helping Kash Patel get into the position of FBI director, and as he was moving towards the transition and getting into the confirmation process, one of the questions that he was very concerned about was, how do we manage leaks in the intelligence community? And my friend Kurt Susdak, who's a whistleblower attorney, who Steve has met and others around my circle have dealt with, and who Kash Patel personally asked to be his deputy director before he changed his mind when Kurt went and proved what kind of honest operator he was. Kurt taught something that I don't think Kash Patel understood before. He said, don't worry about leaks in the FBI. Leaks are a tool of the FBI director, and they are used as such. Now you may continue with that sort of background, I think.
So the background, very simply, is this, and we have that magic number of 3 leakers again. Imagine that. Is that I explained to the Daily Wire person once again that the information being leaked was 180 degrees out of phase with the truth. I even asked the Daily Wire reporter to give me the names of the leakers, which of course he said I can't do that. And so I then said, well, quid pro quo then. You give me the names of the leakers who are giving false information about my personal activities, and I'll give you the fucking scoop of your life. I was going to give him everything.
Sure.
Daily Wire can have the story. He said, I can't do that.
How fun.
I would have traded that for those 3 names.
Yeah, if there even are 3 names.
Yeah. So,
because it's just as easy for someone to say, attribute this to 3 sources. This is this is the official story coming in. We're telling you on and off, on off the record kind of deal. This is how our relationship's going to go.
So, back to Joe Kent. And I explained this to Viva Fry yesterday also. My relationship with Joe Kent is very simple, and it's very short, and it's not complex at all. As I said to Viva yesterday, Joe and I have never shared, a beer, a happy hour, or a dinner together. I've never been to his house. I have sat in his office for about an hour and a half one time. Mm-hmm. We have had one phone call together, and we've exchanged less than a half a dozen text or direct messages. That's it. All right. I don't know anything about his personal life other than what he wrote about in his book and what has been reported in the news. That's it. I don't know anything about whether he has leaked other documents, classified or otherwise. I have no idea. I have seen the reports on his politics. And again, I only know what his politics are based on what's been shared in the media. And that's all a convoluted mess and contradictory in and of itself.
That's right.
I do know, because of the people that work with him and were very close to him, that he was massively America first, massively in line with the campaigned upon MAGA agenda and the promises of the Trump administration, and massively aligned with Trump's promises not to start a new war. And whether he has leaked documents to anybody else, any other member of the media, whether it's Tucker or Candace Owens or anybody else, or he's leaked technology, this technology leak is obviously me. And it's been variously described as technology, server information, etc., by the different media. That's me. And that's the lie. All the other documents, classified or otherwise, I have no knowledge whatsoever whether he did or didn't. And if he did, what? Okay, then investigate him, charge him if there's grounds for charging, prosecute him if there's grounds for that. So be it.
Yeah, and for whatever it's worth, he denied it to Mark Levin, said you can put me on the record for that. And we know that this claim, which relates to you, you are also flat out denying, stating very clearly that it's quite the opposite, that the thing that they're accusing him of is the thing that you did. I've seen a little bit of how this plays out when the allegation is so directly ridiculous to the person who's on it. And you can refute it all day long. It doesn't change the way that the media spin narrative or the influencers are doing it, which obviously looks like an influence op. All of that is there. Let me take a deep breath for a second. I'm gonna give you the full screen if you don't mind. You can finish that thought if you would, and then maybe you'll give a little bit about what it was that you guys relayed in the piece that you put out. And since all our chat pointed it out, and it made me realize it, we keep talking about the word leak, and I'm going to go do that real quickly, and then you may need to do the same thing since I know that you're on some medications. I had to power myself up at 4 a.m. to get some coffee on. So if that's cool, can I give you the full screen for about 90 seconds and allow you to run?
Great. And then we'll
tag out, and I might read something. We'll leak something new that nobody has seen before, because I think all of this stuff is, again, I think it's all connected. I'm going to give you the screen here.
Yeah, one of the things that I think it's most important for everybody to do is go read this story at the Blaze. It is a part of a 3-part series. It is the 3rd part, and this part focuses in on the physicality of Brian Cole Jr., the one who was arrested by the FBI, has been accused by the government of being the pipe bomber. And the physicality is that, as I stated earlier on this podcast, when I saw the very first photo of Brian Cole as it was released to the media, I knew right then that it was not the bomber. I have since canvassed the neighborhood. I have interviewed neighbors. I have interviewed the 7-Eleven store owner, where for 13 years, at least 13 years, because this is how long the franchise owner has run the place. For 13 years, every single day, this young man has walked into that store and purchased 2 Cokes and pizza. Same order, never talks, never interacts, never takes his headphones off. He told me that in 13 years that Brian Cole had maybe said 3 words to him in 13 years in total. And that the kid has this goofy kind of walk, that was his words, goofy kind of walk. And then I saw Brian Cole with my own eyes in a court hearing 3 weeks ago. It was a status hearing at the district courthouse in D.C. And when Brian Cole was escorted out of the back room with the U.S. Marshal, escort to the defendant's table, I gasped. when I saw Brian Cole the first time. I gasped because, as I explained yesterday to Viva, how small a man he is. He's tiny. And I believe, and again, having watched all of the video that is available of the bomber and having seen the movements, seen the behavior, the relaxed, confident, calm athleticism, gait, dare I say, and then seeing Brian in person, they're not the same people. They can't be the same people. Nothing matches. And that's from head to toe. That's eyes, eyesight, neck length, arm length, legs to body ratio. And then I think, which is the most damning evidence of all, because I've been on my hands and knees with a tape measure and measured the exact bricks and concrete squares that were shown, yes, that some of which you're seeing right there, much better and clearer photography than those screenshots that are on the screen right now of the bomber's feet on those exact bricks in perfect locations for measuring them. And I know beyond any shadow of a doubt by my own work, nobody else's input, that you cannot take a young man's foot size, who we estimate to be shoe size to be in the realm of 12 to a 12 and a half. And an expert told me, a guy who owns 900 pair of athletic shoes, because he's a collector, he's called a shoe head, looked at the photography of Brian Cole at that infamous traffic stop, of which we acquired 48 minutes of through Freedom of Information Act request. He looked at Brian's feet and Brian's shoe size and said, that's larger than a 12. And I'm like, how can you tell from that photo? And he goes, well, I own 900 pair.
I'm going to give people another example. It's kind of in my wheelhouse. If you show me a video of someone shooting an AR-15 patterned rifle, I can tell you how long the barrel is. I can maybe tell you what the muzzle device is with just a flash of what it looks like based on length and the way that it's presented. I can tell you the rail length, and it's all because the relative distance between the trigger and the way that the magazine well sit, those are a fixed distance in my mind. I can already assess what they are. So I can tell you if it's a 10 and a half, I might be off by 10 and a half to 11 inches. I can tell you that it's in the 11 inch range, 11 and a half. I can tell you if it's a 14 and a half or a 16 or an 18. I can tell you if it's a 20 inch barrel because I know what the relative distance is just by looking at it. And there are a lot of things that you have. There are things that you guys have played with, whether it be a shovel, a tool that you've used frequently, a hammer, a mallet. You have familiarity with certain things in the physical world that they have relative dimensions. And when you look at them, if you're someone who owns 900 pairs of shoes and you've gone over them with a microscope on every single picture that you want to go and buy the collectible version you find on eBay or on other shoehead forums and so on, when you see those, you know, oh, that's this size. And I can tell that this person is actually selling me the right thing because of this. I've done this with optics recently. I went and bought a Night Force scope from a guy who was selling it, and I wanted to make sure it was the real thing. So I was looking at the relative size of the numbers to the actual dial that it's on. I was looking at the placement and the location of where the etching was supposed to be so you don't get a fake device. So when you start looking at certain things and you get deep into that space, you can look at things and eyeball a lot more accuracy than makes any sense. If you're a guy who's bought 900 shoes, you know a little bit about those shoes.
Yeah, you've bought 900 because you've examined tens of thousands, and you're a collector and you're a dealer and you're a trader, and this is what you're into, and you work at a shoe superstore. You're the manager of a shoe super. You know, you're handling hundreds of pairs of shoes every day, and he's the kind of guy that can look at your foot. You don't need to measure a person's shoe. He looks at your foot and said, "I'll be right back."
It's the same way a mechanic will look at it. Yeah, a mechanic will open up an engine, flip up the hood and then look in there and say, it's like, oh, can I get an 8mm real quick? That's an 8mm. And they can eyeball the size that a socket that they require. These are things that you do. Relative size is something human beings are really, really good at doing when you do it professionally in your pattern recognition job.
And so real quickly, the reason why, especially, and this is especially because of a couple of very clear frame shots we have on these bricks and perfectly perpendicularly aligned with the bricks, with the heel right on the seam between the bricks. We were able to get an exact measurement. An exact measurement of the distance, heel to toe, of this Nike Air Max Speed Turf shoe that the bomber was wearing. 2018 vintage, by the way.
Yeah.
Limited edition, collectible, blah, blah, blah. And I have the perfect length measurement on it. It's exact. And now I know a lot about the shoe. And I've had, since the broadcast yesterday, I've had people online say, "Oh, you don't even know the half of it. That shoe has this, really bulky, long outer sole." I said, no, I do. I've measured it. I've held them in my hands. I've measured it is. I know that the outsole is an inch to an inch and a half longer than the insole of the shoe. And so that's why I can confidently say, and this is my measurements against what I've measured holding that exact shoe in my hands and measuring it, that shoe is likely only a 9 to a 9.5 as worn by the bomber. I know that Joe wants me to not be so, he would like to concede up to a 10, my partner, and I'm willing to give it a 10. I'm willing to go that close, or allow it that extra half size. But because of what I know about the outsole and the bulkiness of that shoe, is that it's likely smaller. And what we know, because I've done the same thing at the accident site where Brian Cole Jr. had the fender bender in his little car, is 2017 Nissan Sentra, which we even have the VIN number to. Mm-hmm. We know a lot about that car. I went and measured the exact gutters, curbs, grass, and concrete, dividers that he stood on that day, that we captured from very clear video from the body cam. And from that, we can very confidently say that he wears at least a 12 to a 12.5. And the expert looked at it and said, "It's larger than that." I said, "How can you tell?" And he said, ankle to toe length, I can see instantly. And then also the distance between the eyelets, the bottom, set of eyelets to the toe, that's where all the extra length is built into the shoe. From the where you tie the eyelets, where the shoestrings go up to the ankle,
the toe box.
Right, stays static. And for most shoes, maybe they stretch those out if you're Shaq O'Neal, I don't know, but that's nevertheless, by and
he's
large,
not a tall guy. So we're talking about someone who's obviously in jumpingly disproportionate, with shoes over a size 12 and feet that are not compatible, with a body that's 5'6" or 5'5.5".
Yeah. I mean, and this is a guess, it's an estimate. We're trying to find this out from the family right now. But if I had to guess, I would say, because I was just shocked how tiny he is. So the FBI estimated that the hoodied bomber was 5'7". I don't know whether the FBI takes the shoe, the bulky Nike Air Max.
Yeah, they call it stack height. Whenever I've looked at shoes, the stack height is the height from the ground to the bottom of the insole, or to the top of the insole.
Right. So I don't know if that is part of their estimate, or if that's the gross, height, including the shoe, that they listed as a 5'7". But I would say that at the very least he's 5'6". I mean, sorry, at the most he's 5'6". At the very least he's 5'5". Shockingly tiny man. And with in several instances, disproportional body parts and lengths of body parts. And
shorter
that
femurs, longer arms, torso length is not proportional to the leg length.
Right. And not uncommon with people with his other neurological and mental limitations.
Yep. I'm going to read a letter that I got. Do you want to duck out for a minute and do your business? And is that, you can come back in whenever. I'm going to share something with the audience that I got the other day that I think is relevant.
I'll tap out even on the screen here because I have the technology.
All right. So folks, I'm going to put something on the screen that I received the other day. This has nothing to do with Steve Baker. This is just something I'm sharing with you. And you guys can clip this if you want to. I got a letter from the Clairlock LLP law firm. It's based in Alexandria, Virginia. It was apparently via email and FedEx, although they mailed it to an address that I haven't lived at in years. It's the last address that I worked at the FBI. And it goes as follows. First of all, I'll tell you more about Clairlock in a minute. But the email reads as follows. R.E. Shawnee Kirchhoff. Mr. Seraphin. Clairlock LLP is defamation counsel to Shawnee Kirchhoff. This is dated January 16th, 2026. Ms. Kirchhoff has retained us following your repeated false claims that she planted pipe bombs in connection with the events of January 6, 2021. Those false allegations were first published in Blaze Media, since updated November 8th, 2025 article. They give a hyperlink to that. Blaze Media relied on you as a key source for its now debunked allegations. Just take a quick moment here. You guys have heard Steve Baker. He explained to it, and nowhere in there was I a key source for anything other than he called me when he found something out. And I mentioned that it was compatible with information that we had when I worked there at the FBI. Even after Blaze Media's false claims were conclusively disproven, you have continued to reference and repeat those same allegations on your podcast, X page, and other media appearances, to include a post to X as recently as January the 8th of 2026. Your republication of these allegations after they were proven false and your willful disregard of exonerative evidence is strong evidence that you subjectively knew they were false, or at least at a minimum recklessly disregard for their truth or falsity. Well, here's the problem with this letter. Number one, they make the claim that there was exonerative evidence. We'll evaluate that in a moment because they actually reference it. And then we're going to go to what it is that they claim is out there. Then they also make a claim that at the very minimum, I've disregarded their truth or falsity. You'd have to actually prove that I think that it is not true. I've actually complied with the demands of this letter, although I haven't acknowledged it to them, but I am publicly acknowledging it now. So folks at Clairlock, I got your email. I got the contact that you tried to reach out to my other counsel in a defamation case, which is also garbage, and it should be dismissed. The problem with what you guys are saying is that the information doesn't align with the fact pattern that we've been talking about. And apparently you couldn't figure out where I lived, even though other people could, and there are federal court cases with my name, and my LLC is publicly listed. To be clear, going back to the letter, your allegations about Ms. Kirchhoff are untrue, and there's no dispute as to their falsity. Ms. Kirchhoff had nothing to do with the attempted pipe bombing on January 5th, 2021. That night, as video evidence conclusively demonstrates, she was at home caring for her dog. That night, as video evidence conclusively demonstrates, she was at home caring for her dog. I'm going to go to some stories here that were written. A federal security officer, this is going to CBS News. Federal security officer linked to a thwarted January 6 pipe bomb attack cleared her name by providing an alibi video of her playing with her puppies at the time the devices were planted, sources told CBS News. The FBI has now ruled her out as a suspect in the 2021 plot, according to 3 sources. 3 sources have told you, unnamed, that she's been ruled out by the FBI. And there's video of her playing with puppies. That's plural. That's a young dog, puppies. 3 sources told CBS about this. We had the same kind of coverage in the Washington Post. And we're going to go to the Daily Beast article here. Innocent woman smeared. And what do they say? An aide to Tulsi Gabbard linked to the innocent ex-cop J6 pipe bomber and a secret memo that got leaked. The memo blindsided the FBI, which investigated the woman and then cleared her because a video of her playing with puppies proved her alibi. The innocent woman was a Capitol police officer who fought off MAGA rioters on January the 6th. We're going to go back to the letter. Ms. Kirchhoff had nothing to do with the attempted pipe bombs on January 5th, 2021. That night, as video evidence conclusively demonstrates, she was at home caring for her dog. Well, it turns out that a dog is not a puppy. And in an investigation, as I'm told by Netflix and the Jack Reacher series, details matter. And that is a conclusively differential thing. And here's the other real problem. That conclusively demonstrable video evidence was never provided to the public. It certainly wasn't provided to me. And so I have no way of knowing what it is you're talking about. You're now arguing things that are not available to anybody. But I am more than willing to review it. I'm willing to air it on my program for whatever sort of access we can share. I am more than happy to review it, do the forensic analysis as required of that video, and I'm willing to say what I see if you want to make it available to me. But what I don't do is take other people and sources from mainstream media outlets as fact without knowing who those people are. And I can't vet them. I can't vet the authors of those pieces. I don't know them. So I'm unable to do that. And I'm unable to say conclusively one way or another on evidence that was not provided to the public. On December the 4th, 2025, the FBI announced it had apprehended and charged a real suspect, Brian Cole Jr., and he'd since admitted to planting the pipe bombs. We've gone through the problems with that confession. I think there will continue to be more. And we've spent the last 2 hours explaining to you that we don't believe, me, Steve Baker, others who have seen it, including members of the intelligence agencies, do not believe that Brian Cole Jr. is the one. And a congressman, Tom Massey, agrees. The same day, Blaze Media updated their story, removing false claims about Ms. Kirchhoff, admitting that in value of fairness and accuracy, they required a retraction. Blaze Media backed down from that story. Not that it doesn't exist, and not that I can't talk about a story that was retracted, because actually the retraction is part of the story now, and I continue to do that. Here's what they claim. Your false reporting has caused Ms. Kirchhoff enormous harm. It subjected her to law enforcement scrutiny. It damaged her relationship at work and in her community. It permanently branded her with allegations of violent criminal action or violent criminal conduct. They have in all quotes and in italics. We demand that you unequivocally retract your allegations against Ms. Kirchhoff with the same prominence and fanfare with which you defamed her, and publicly apologize to Ms. Kirchhoff for the harm your false allegations have caused. Refusal to do so would be further evidence of your actual malice. Well, let me just also answer those. There is no actual malice, and I am more than happy to apologize to her when you do a few things, because I need them, and I don't want my audience to take it in bad faith. In good faith, if you want me to apologize to your client, there are two things that are required. One, give me the exculpatory evidence and allow me to evaluate it on my own, and then make your client available for an interview. It would be a very big stream. It will certainly have more prominence than anything I've said anywhere else. And if you want to have her in an online interview and a face-to-face interview, I'm willing to travel to make it happen. I'm sure we can scrounge some money up. We can sit together and I can tell her face-to-face, and you guys can assess that it'll actually be an honest apology if it is in fact warranted, but you have some work to do on your end. And this claim is nothing more than a piece of paper that was sent to an address that I haven't lived at. So it's nothing to me. More on that in a minute. In light of the above, you should immediately take the affirmative steps to preserve and retain all emails, text messages, signal messages, audiovisual recordings, voicemails, drafts, notes, etc., all the things, podcast episodes and scripts. They obviously don't know how we do the podcast here, but there's no script. Electronically stored information, including metadata that relates to Ms. Kirchhoff in any way. No problem. That's already been done. Just so you guys are aware, I haven't deleted anything that would be evidentiary. I hope you haven't either. This demand should be construed in the broadest possible sense, regardless of the evidence or the medium, including but not limited to all communications with Mr. Baker, Mr. Hanneman, Alex Jones, the social media user Armitage, and any third parties concerning Ms. Kirchhoff or the identity or the identity of the attempted pipe bomber. What they'll find, by the way, in all these sort of conversations and all these sort of descriptions and any sort of interactions that I've had with any of these people is an honest, good faith belief that what Mr. Baker has said is correct, that they said I believe. I have no malice. I don't know anything about Shani Kirchhoff. I don't really care anything about her as a human being. I only care that somebody got away with doing something on that day, and I don't think Brian Cole Jr. is that person. And I'll say it definitively. I believe that Brian Cole Jr. is not, in fact, the pipe bomber, and all the evidence that I see conclusively shows that. I don't know what puppies show, but I'm willing to evaluate that as well. And maybe there's more information to it. But it turns out If you guys want to step into this rabbit hole with me, we're talking about something that's kind of ridiculous. And you're not going to find anything that is incriminating in my conversation. There's no malice. There's no discussion of how to set somebody up that nobody has a personal interest in framing or anything else. I do think you might find that at the FBI, and maybe you guys care about this. They go on to talk about the document preservation extent to personal devices. All my devices are personal and professional. They're all the same. No big deal here. They go on a little bit more about that. I'm not going to read it, but it's on the screen. You guys can see. We request that you immediately confirm receipt of this letter, which they have no ability to comply. But guess what? I just did. January 16th. Here we are on March 25th saying that we did. We've confirmed that we've implemented this process, or I've implemented the process. Yes, I've taken all the steps that I'm able to do, and I've held on to all the information that you're going to want to see. It's not going to help any case that you might want to bring. In fact, I think this is going to be really problematic for you if you guys decide to do it. The letter constitutes, this letter constitutes a complete retraction demand under all applicable laws, and she reserves the right. The demands made herein are without limitation, and she reserves the right to come after me present or future claims. So there you have it. That's the story. That has not been shared previously. If they want to do a sit down face to face and they want to make this exculpatory stuff available, then we'll do that. All right. That's a little segment. Come back to my friend Steve Baker. Mr. Baker, welcome back. I hope you had a successful mission.
Successful mission and a replenishing of the coffee. So we're good.
Outstanding. Great stuff. I'm sure you caught the tail end of this thing. We don't have to address it any further.
Talking about.
So as we wrap up talking about your piece, would it be fair to say that I was not a contributing source to, or a underlying source, or a central source to any story that you've written as of yet? I can't think of any that I actually was the foundation of.
Nothing related to the pipe bomb. You may have been in a source, expert source on topics and, subject matter issues in times past because, well, you are. And that's how I opened up our discussion today, is that I seek a multitude of counsel, not just in my personal life, but also in my professional life and in my, investigative responsibilities. And things, Steve Friend knows things, George Hill knows things, George knows things you don't know, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera.
Often.
Steve Friend's a walking FBI fucking encyclopedia. It's like, what do you not know about that frickin' agency, past, present, future? And so obviously I reach out to you guys. Not only are you friends and have become friends over the years, but you are still a wealth of information about accuracy and detail, even to the point of me. Look, you've corrected me on terminology I've used, because obviously I'll come across better, whether in a story or on a podcast, if I say the right words. That's right. Yeah. Okay. My description may have been, somewhat accurate, but it wasn't the actual factual terminology or nomenclature used in the IC or in law enforcement or whatever. So you've contributed that to my life, and I hope that you continue to do so.
Sure.
And so, yeah, but on this story itself, you had put into the media and into the historical record your involvement in investigating persons of interest 2 and 3, specifically person of interest 3 and his residence in Falls Church, Virginia. Exactly a week after January 6th, you were sitting at his front door.
And were you able to independently substantiate my claims, by the way?
Yes, because one of the... so in addition to the lies that Joe Kent gave me her name, in addition to the lie that Joe Kent gave me illegal access to government computers and software, one of the other lies coming from the 7th floor of the Hoover Building, mouthpiece, same person, was that Kyle Seraphin was not even on that surveillance team. That's Kyle telling a lie. But I have spoken to Yes. An existing, not fired, not suspended, not dismissed FBI agent who was on the same surveillance team with you and has validated your participation.
And we know that whistleblowers have documentation showing it's gone to members of Congress that the FBI was inaccurate in their description, and that, of course, that those addresses were in play on the days that I said, which goes back to my claims to the Daily Wire as early as 2023.
Why would the FBI and the CIA tell such blatant, easily disprovable lies? I'll let you answer that question.
I think, folks, that this is the real, this is the big question. And I'm going to sum it up here with Steve, because I think this is where we're going to get to the all things being connected. And I think I want to give a unified theory. And I'd love it if Steve weighed in on my unified theory. I'll say it, and then he can say whether he agrees with any part of it. I think that the story goes very simply that the intelligence community, as I've been saying on this podcast since I started speaking, believes that you're not entitled to information. And that goes along with another piece of it, which makes them believe that they'll never have to actually reveal the information. It's hidden from FOIAs. It's hidden because of ongoing investigations. We found out recently about prohibited access files. That means that people will never even know they exist, even inside the agency. They know that if you are a whistleblower and you bring it to a member of Congress, or you try to expose it in daylight, even if you're not dealing with classified material, they will destroy you. They'll rip your reputation up. They will come after you criminally. They've done both of those things to me and done every attempt to ruin my reputation. They will have whisper campaigns exactly like what are going on to Joe Kent. And so when I tell you that the story of what Joe Kent's going through right now feels very personal and very familiar, it's because they've done this to me. They told my friends that I wasn't a credible source. They shared with me and added doubt that the things that I said that were factually true and demonstrably, provably true were not conclusively determined to be true. Because the documents exist. They just don't think you'll ever be able to have access to them. And it's mostly because people that work inside these agencies know that it will end their job. It'll know that it'll end their career. And it may, in fact, actually end their life because of all the things that go along with that. And so I think intelligence agencies are the enemy of American liberty. They continue to be. It's an ongoing supposition of this program that the FBI being part of the intelligence community is maybe the most dangerous thing to American liberty. And that's because it crosses over with the same place that the CIA and the NSA, DIA, and others that work in the shadows that are looking for information for its own purposes, which should be mostly overseas. And when it starts using those same tools on the citizens that pay their salary and that they are theoretically sworn to protect under the Bill of Rights, they're ignoring them. So that's my piece. Can I give you the all-connected theory that I have right now working, Steve, from everything I've seen from you and everything else?
Yeah, absolutely.
Here's what I think went down on January 6th, folks. I think that everybody says one thing because you're one-dimensional thinkers in the space of government. You don't recognize the differential and the entities, the siloing of information. So here's what I think. I think that the United States Capitol Police executed what looks like a coup, but they probably didn't know what it was. And it would be very hard for them to know what it is and still accomplish that mission properly. I think they figured it out after the fact because they were all involved and there were a lot of news stories. Capitol Police did not operate that on alone. And so the odds are is that a member or members of Congress were involved in the planning of it and the execution at a very high level. We're talking about a very small number of people, maybe 2, maybe 3 tops. The number of Congress people, I don't know, but it could be as small as 1 or 2. Then I think that there was some ground level requirements. There was some physical assets that needed to be put in play, and you needed the responsive mechanisms to also play ball. So I think there was an ATF component to it. So the 2 agencies so far would be U.S. Capitol Police and ATF. And the evidence is that the bomb squad commander who was doing the investigation on January 6th to respond to the devices that were found ended up in a senior position at U.S. Capitol Police. And that is not a logical step that you would do. You would not move from ATF under DOJ over into the congressional branch. So now you have 2 different agencies, plus, like I said, maybe a member of Congress or 2. And I think the FBI was the mop-up squad. And the CIA is the wild card. Because the person that was originally alleged and who has sent me a letter, by the way, the law firm Claire Locke that sent me the letter that I was reading that didn't have anything to do with the previous part of the show. The interesting thing about them is that they were also the ones that settled the Dominion lawsuit on behalf of Fox News and took in $750 million in a thing that many people thought was related to the intelligence community and the possibility of stealing an election in 2020. For those of you who believe that, you know the story of the voting machines and the elections and all the sort of weird ties that went along with it. Deal with that as you will. I'm dealing with it as best I can. The CIA is the wild card, and I think the FBI was the mop-up crew. I think they went in and did the job that they were allowed to do, in so much as they were actually allowed to follow the investigative steps as far as they could. And if somebody told them that something was off limits, then I think it was off limits. And so they did the good faith, which is why they never came up with somebody until Steve Baker rattled the hornet's nest. And then they came up with somebody that didn't fit the parameters of any of the previous investigative work, the work that was done in Tom Massey's office. And they brought that man who was the localized expert inside Congress in-house at the FBI. He's now out. And if Mr. Yates wants to come and speak with us, I'd be more than happy to tell his story and anything he wants to share. And if he's looking for a way to do it, I'll help him find a bigger platform too. But my unified theory is executed by a small number of people, expanded in a cover-up role with people basically doing their jobs, but with limited parameters. And then we ended up in a scenario where some wild card was not accounted for. And that wild card's name is Steve Baker. That's what I think. I think Steve Baker discovered things that he was not supposed to do. That information rattled a number of people and they took rash steps and they ended up doing something that they cannot walk away from now. Now, Kash Patel's reputation, Dan Bongino's reputation, Pam Bondi's reputation, Janine Pirro's reputation are now inextricably linked to a top 3 priority case the FBI couldn't solve until someone claimed that they did solve it. And then they went and rushed in and got someone that doesn't even come close to fitting it. And they thought that he would probably plea out because the weight of the government is absolutely it's pretty overwhelming for most people. And instead they found that it was a person who had a strong family, had the financial means to resist, and they are now fighting the uphill battle that many of the suspendables understand, is that when you say something against the government, you are now in basically a battle for your life and your livelihood. And that's where Brian Cole Jr. sits today. That's my summary of what I think, with some opening-ended stuff. That's where I think we're at, and I will open it back up to you, Steve. What do you reflect on that?
Yeah, I think, except for maybe a couple of, because we are operating in grand unified theory territory right now, except for a couple of minor details, I'm in agreement with you. I happen to know a couple of things that we have not been able to talk about yet because we have been embargoed by investigators who have asked us not to reveal them because they're hoping to, from a criminal standpoint, these are, quote unquote, ongoing investigation things, but things that I know, not just on off the record or on background, but I know to be an absolute fact from whistleblowers within the Capitol Police, that there is a document, that's all I'll say, a document, no more specificity than that will reveal. It is the most nuclear bombshell about January 6th, yet to be revealed, being investigated, while they're hoping to get the Capitol Police personnel who circulated this document under transcripted interviews, under oath, before going public. I have verification not only from whistleblowers that, in fact, this document does exist, that it was accidentally released to congressional investigators, probably not caught by the FBI. That happens, by the way.
Mm-hmm.
You're releasing hundreds of thousands of pages of documents, millions in this case. Things slip by. That will reveal that at least at Capitol Police leadership level, from assistant chief down a couple of notches, that they knew that Chief Son would not have a job by the end of the day.
Chief Son had operational control of the Capitol Police on the day of, yes?
He was the chief. Chief Stephen Son was the chief on January 6th.
Yeah.
The next day, he did not have a job. But this document confidently said that he would not have a job by the end of the day on January 6th.
Let's broaden it real quickly, too. With all the information that we have, and there's plenty more that's been shared with people that are relevant parties, whether they be in the legal sphere, or whether they be law enforcement or members of the intel communities and so on. It's not like we're giving you the broad strokes of stuff that we know or that we've experienced. I still operate under the nothing is going to happen theory. So I'm not promising anybody anything. But can we talk about the implications if this was actually laid bare? Let's just say that the grand unified theory that we're working under, or some version thereof, were laid bare. What would it say, and what would the implications be, maybe for the American public, if you had to just kind of speculate?
Okay, if there was a conspiracy, and there was, in my opinion, and conspiracies do exist. Especially government conspiracies do exist. The government agencies conspire against other agencies. Government agencies conspire against congressional members. Government agencies conspire against legislation. It's all a circle jerk of conspiratorial actions taken to take out your enemies. January 6th was a conspiracy to take out the deep state's biggest enemy, which was Donald Trump, in a final nuclear blow.
Mm-hmm.
And the Capitol Police, this is my grand unified theory, were the foot soldiers in this conspiracy, multi-agency conspiracy. They were the foot soldiers necessary to ignite the fires, create the diversions. And when these types of things are launched, as you accurately said, it's a very small group of people. And even amongst the small group of people, even they don't know what each other knows. It's very highly siloed, as we say. So you have a very small group of people participating in the various portions of the conspiracy, and they are participating probably in ignorance of the overall objectives of the conspiracy. Mm-hmm. That's why I do not believe that the January 6th pipe bomber even knew
what the overall plan was.
What the overall plan was.
I think that's a very safe assumption.
I believe that the January 6th, because of, as I said, from years of looking at the confidence, the lack of fear, the lack of anxiety, the clear knowledge of where the bomber was going, the ability to circumnavigate and to, at the right time, be in the blind spots of Capitol CCTV means foreknowledge. Sorry, Brian Cole did not have that.
Right.
Couldn't have had that unless you want to say that Brian Cole was conspiring with the Capitol Police. Just that alone.
And by the way, that agrees with Dan Bongino's previous statements that this was someone who knew what was going on, was connected to government, would have had to have been connected. This is the unifying theory that actually unites all the things that the previous podcast bros that run the agency all signed on to.
And they accurately signed on to it because it's an irrefutable, and it's the most inconvenient of truths related to this arrest of Brian Cole. Brian Cole did not know where the blind spots were in Capitol Police CCTV coverage in that mile and a half square area.
Right. But the people that would be able to do it would have had to be very specific, and there's not a ton of them.
That's right. And the person who planted the devices clearly had that knowledge and had the confidence that this individual was doing their job. And I believe that job was, and highly siloed information, was that person believes that they were participating in a training exercise.
I'm going to tell people how that looks. I used to take off my license plates, which would theoretically be illegal. And driving with license plates would make you a little bit concerned when you don't have real license plates. They're either fake or you took them off altogether and you're driving with no license plates. It's the thing that people that are used to being a regular adult would be like, oh, I think I'm driving a little bit naked now. I'm exposed. But I did it because it was my job, and I did it because of the surveillance type of work I did required that I do it. So when I pulled off into a parking lot, I didn't look over my shoulder and wonder, hey, what if someone catches me taking off these license plates and swapping on another set? I don't care. Because I have the justification and a badge on my hip. I had a set of credentials that said I work for the FBI and I'm doing something that is authorized by federal law. My work is above whatever your state law is. That's what the Supremacy Clause says. So I can do this stuff, even though other people might be looking over their shoulder wondering, I wonder if someone sees me or what if I get caught? I had the supreme confidence that what I was doing was both right, it was allowed, it was authorized, and it was within the purview and the duty of my job. So I just operated that way. And there's a very big difference between doing something where you're trying not to get caught and you're concerned about it, and knowing that what you're doing is your job, is your duty, is the requirement of what you've been asked to do, and that there's nothing wrong with it because it's been signed off on. When you do, you move differently and have different confidence when you are given the confidence of authority to be able to act a certain way. And I think that's what Steve's describing. It's something that makes perfect sense to me. Your human understanding will be the same for all of you who are sitting there imagining, well, you know, what it would be like. Imagine doing something you know that you're not supposed to do. Then imagine you're doing something that you're told to do, and you have a legal authority from a very high charter that says, yeah, do this. It's good to go. I'm playing soccer on a field, even though the soccer field's closed. It's like, well, the mayor authorized it, and we're here, and we have the piece of paper that says we booked the field, and just because nobody thinks we're supposed to be here and the sign says no, doesn't mean that I'm not supposed to. Meanwhile, the alternative would be I'm playing soccer because we jumped the fence, and if we see someone, we're all going to scatter and run. It's a very, very different level of confidence.
That's exactly it. And because of that, this individual was either working on the behalf with the knowledge given to them by the Capitol Police, or was a Capitol Police officer, period. Then fast forward the next day to 1:05 p.m. and the plainclothes Capitol Police surveillance unit, 2 officers that found the DNC bomb, had only just a few minutes before that. And by the way, they did not come from the RNC. That has been a lie that has been perpetrated. They were not at the RNC. We were able to find their car arriving into that area minutes before, parking at the South Metro parking lot. They did not go to the RNC investigation. According to the FBI and congressional records investigation from the original Select Committee, Nancy Pelosi's committee, that they were among 3 counter surveillance teams that were assigned to go look for subsequent devices, so other devices in and around the Capitol after the RNC device was discovered. And they got out of their car after parking, dilly-dallied around for 5 minutes, putting on their jackets and their backpacks and getting ready. And then in a beeline, without looking at anything else, without looking under any other tree, bush, gutter, trash can, parked car, nothing. And in fact, walking down the sidewalk, doing this on their phone, they made a beeline to the only 2 places that the hooded bomber sat down the night before, 17 hours prior. It's the only place they went. Nowhere else.
It's completely illogical. There's zero explanation other than you looked where the bombs were because you knew where the bombs were. There's no other explanation, people, just so you're aware. There's nothing.
Yeah. Congressional investigators have interviewed them and do not believe them in the least. And I know the content, the questions, and the answers, and still embargoed from releasing that. But I'll just tell you, they don't believe them at all. What they were told. The story that they made up.
Yeah, and it doesn't check. You wouldn't, like, again, people are pointing out in our chat, what about bomb sniffing dogs? Yeah, these guys are better than that. It turns out you don't have to go get a bomb sniffing dog if you already know where to look.
That's exactly it.
And there's no other thing you can conclude because they didn't have time to review CCTV footage. That was not an option. The area was too big. The number of cameras are too numerous. They were able to walk directly from their parked car to directly where it was. And then they stopped for reasons that you and I know. When they stopped, they chose to not continue on. And there's nothing logical about that. In fact, it's contrary to all law enforcement. If you find one device, you look for a second. If you find a second, you look for a third. Why would you not? Tom Massey brought this up when he talked to Matt Kibbe. He brought it up when he talked to you. This is a completely illogical thing for an investigative agency to do. There is zero reason to believe that this was not compartmented. The U.S. Capitol Police have members of their force or former members that are involved in it because they have to have been, because the behavior dictates it as such. There's no other answer. There cannot be any other answer.
My grand unified theory, I believe, at the very least, one of those 2 plainclothes counter surveillance team, maybe both, also believe that they were just participating in a training exercise.
Sure.
And then the shit that happened at the Capitol and began just before 1 o'clock that day, it made it turn into a very ill-timed training device at the or training exercise at the very least. Then the day after, the hoodied bomber, a Capitol police officer, the two Capitol police officers who went to the only two places that 17 hours prior the hoodied bomber sat down at, and the second of those places, locations that the hoodied bomber sat down at, was the place where the device was planted the night before. And as you said, they did not then proceed on looking for a third device because they already knew where they were. Then they were called in and said and told and signed documents agreeing to never speak of this ever again. And I've got a lot more components to my grand unified theory, but that's the pipe bomb version of it. And I believe,
I believe it's the simplest as well.
I especially believe that the hoodied individual did not believe that they were participating in a nefarious activity that night.
Which also goes to that. Yep. That even if you were doing something and you were asked to do it, if you thought it was wrong, you'd have a different mannerism. You'd behave differently. One would think.
But that individual has been since told that if you ever speak of it, your life, as you know it, at the very least, is over.
Makes sense to me. You don't have to answer this question. I know I don't have to tell you that, but I haven't been sued for anything. Have you been sued for anything? I got that letter, but the letter that you don't know what I'm talking about. I read it when you were gone. Have you been sued by anybody about this?
No.
All right.
I haven't.
Well, let's leave it at that for the day. What say you?
I think that's a great stopping point. We're coming up on just a couple of minutes away, being 3 hours into this. So
yeah, that feels like the first time we ever interviewed.
That's like this is normal show length for you and I. And by the way, we just scratched the surface.
Yeah, people have to understand that. Let me put you on the screen. Let people know the best places to follow you, support what you're doing, and to keep up with you and your health journey as you go on it.
I mean, obviously, from a daily standpoint, the best place is going to always be X. I also have a Facebook page that I'm kind of reactivating again and becoming more engaged there. That was my original home before everything else blew up, and I have multiple. I have my own my backup Facebook pages as well, but my largest one is it's got about 40,000 followers and was dying because of after joining the Blaze. I've had a congressional obligation for all of my original content to go there. But I am re-engaging there. Also on X. X is probably where I am the most prolific on a daily basis, and that's just Steve Baker USA, at Steve Baker USA. That'll take you not only to my X page, but also to my personal Facebook page, which will then you can link to my kind of newsy page on Facebook from there. And I do have a locals platform, which again has been dying on the vine since I became an employee of the Blaze, and that was a growing and very successful project for me before the Blaze hired me. But again, because of congressional contractual obligations, let me get the right word out. I was not able to use that as my primary content source. And so what I'm going to say to everyone is that I have stepped out a little bit further than the confines of my current employment relationship have approved of. So I may or may not have a job in the next day or so. which if that happens, we're prepared, and I'll be making those announcements on social media about how then to support and how to continue to support this ongoing investigation, because this story is not yet completely told, and it's going to be. That promise has been made to all parties, including those who I care about their children and the futures of their children. I am going to tell this story in its totality with all of the detail, all of the names, and it's just a matter of where and with whom I will be allowed to tell the story.
That's the story. That's it. It's going to come out. So everybody involved has an opportunity to be the hero they want to be. They can go out there and be on the right side of this. They can support the truth, or they can choose to do something else. I hope they choose to side with truth. I hope your employer knows that this is important. This is really important to America. And Americans are not buying whatever's being crammed down their throats as a lying narrative. And I think that tomorrow's show, which I'm going to show some of the polling and the midterm sort of data and some of the other nonsensical sort of psyop, narrative op, information ops that are going on, they're really showing it. There's a small number of people that are willing to just trust me because I'm a voice that needs to be trusted. Everybody else, it's the old thing. It's like, in God we trust, everybody else pays cash. We're kind of in the everybody better pay cash right now. The receipts better be shown. So yeah. I hope they recognize that. I hope your employer, I hope our federal government recognizes that. The time for being able to lie with impunity is smaller and smaller, and the number of people that are being emboldened have greater ability to connect to each other. They may not be more numerous, but we are better connected and more organized.
We're going, and not only are we going to finish this story, I believe we're going to win. And there are certain individuals that can participate in the victory, or they themselves can become victims of the truth. It depends on how they want to handle it. And that includes, well, more than I feel comfortable even saying right now. But I will tell you that there are, in fact, even within the, look, we have every reason to be just as critical and derisive of FBI, CIA, the intelligence community at large as we want to. Yes, it's true. Probably 80% of the IC is opposed to quote unquote America First agenda. And it's the easiest way to explain it. 80%, that's a frightening number, by the way.
It's a shocking number, but it's exactly what I would expect as well.
But it's real. And the reality is that among that remaining 20% are some heroes that are trying to do the right thing and affect change and get the truth out and assist in the dissemination of the truth. And I'm hoping that someday we'll be able to acknowledge some of these specific heroes.
Yeah, I hope so too. If not, some of you are listening. God bless you guys. Thanks for what you're doing. We know who you are. Just because you're not named doesn't mean you're not part of it. And for those of you that know that you're on the wrong side of this right now, you got that choice. You can be victor or you can be villain, is what it looks like to me. If we're going to give it a binary, you can join the victory.
Victim, there's pick your, you can be a villain and a victim at the same time in this story. I promise you that.
Yeah, for sure.
Yep.
All right, Steve, get some good rest. Keep getting that heart in shape. I so much appreciate you joining me for as long as we did. Folks, thanks for paying attention to the glitches. Follow Steve follow Steve at Steve Baker USA, Steve Baker USA. I'll put it in the show notes so that it's out there. If you guys are watching on any of the platforms, make sure you're keeping track of Steve. Put the notifications on. You won't be sad. You'll get a little bit of snarky humor. You'll get a little bit of amusing anecdotes and some breadcrumbs, and then you'll get real bombshell revelations of real good work done. So, Steve, you're the man.
Kyle, my friend, thank you.
All right, we'll talk soon. Mm-hmm. Ladies and gentlemen, from the road, we're here in Arizona on the road doing a away show. This is an away game. I appreciate you guys joining with all the sort of strange things that took place on this video presentation to you. The fact that we had glitches and max headroom and 90s sort of jumps and so on. But you guys stuck with us. I saw that our audience on YouTube was large. And so share the show. Do me a major favor. I didn't want to plug anything else. We've got some affiliates that are linked in there. If you're looking for a firearm, if you're looking for accessories, go check out my buddies over at Shield Arms. They're great. If you're looking for storage for that, we'll do more on it later. But the folks over at Secure It, I've been using them for coming up on 5 years now. Outstanding company. Their stuff is so good for what it is. It's the most organized, useful thing. So check them out as well. And that really goes into our sort of our 4 Fs, if you will. The 4 Fs in this world are faith, family, fitness, firearms. We've got 4 of them. The 4th one, store them properly, make them accessible, lock them up in a place where they're safe, and so on. And check all those things out. So we have an entire page of affiliates over on Locals. You don't even have to be a member of it. Just KyleSeraphinShow.com is the last link in the show notes. That will let you get all the people we work with if you want to support what we're doing. God bless all of you for listening. Again, share it with the person that you love. Subscribe to the channel if you have not. Give us a like. I'll do some palate cleanses. I'll owe you guys. I'll go into debt on that later. We'll see you again tomorrow. I know that was a long one. Have a great Wednesday.
Thanks for listening to the Kyle Seraphin Show, streamed live weekdays on rumble.com/Kyle Seraphin. Follow Kyle on Twitter, Truth Social, and Instagram at Kyle Seraphin.